Welcome everyone to the Sunday Speedrunner Spotlight, episode 11. I've been doing this a long time now, but plenty more to do, so we're not stopping yet. Anyway, today we got Storster here. How's it going?
Doing all right. How about you?
I'm alive, so we consider that a victory.
That's how I feel most days.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, nothing too much to worry about, so yep, we winning over here. Well,
yep.
I guess we should talk about some speedrunning.
Yeah.
A fun topic.
Indeed. There's quite a lot to talk about. I've done quite a lot of things. I don't know if there's anything particular you had in front of your mind.
Well, I'm sure we'll get to it. Uh, I'll start with the obvious of how'd you get into it.
All right. So if we time travel back to 2014, about uh, at the time, so what? I was like in middle school, right? I was having one of those, I had like a lot of other people. I had this phase where I was like really, really into Minecraft when I was like in my early teens, around that time. Um, that's like all I played for probably like 3 years straight. Uh, and one of the biggest Minecraft YouTubers in certain ways was Seth Bling, who's done a lot of known for like redstone and command blocks and programming, all that fun stuff. And I remember I would tune into his Twitch sometimes. I saw he was on Twitch, and one day he was just randomly doing Mario World speed runs instead, and I was like, oh, this is a thing. Like, I knew about Mario World and stuff, but I was like, why is there a timer there and stuff? And after that, I kind of just like went down this rabbit hole of searching things. And I didn't really watch any other speed. I exclusively only watched Seth for quite a bit because I was like, whatever. I'd watch it, but I was just still into Minecraft for a while. And I remember after one of his live streams one day, he decided to raid another Mario World speedrunner. I believe it was Brams. Um, he's kind of off and on nowadays. He does some other things, but he was doing, instead of doing, I think Stepling was doing 11 exit, like the kind of de facto like any percent category in a way. And Brams was doing 96, which is kind of the de facto 100% category. And I realized, oh, there's like different ways to go about this. I thought that what Seth was doing was just this one thing that everyone did. And then I realized, oh, there's an actual community of people that do this. Like it's not just like Seth doing this for fun and just doing whatever. There's like a whole branch of this. And then I remember I stuck around for that entire stream until it ended, and then he rated another person. I believe that was like Author Blues, who at this point has speedran everything. If you've been in the speedrun community long enough, you probably know who he is. Um, but then after that, I think I kind of just got really hooked into it. I didn't start speedrunning for a handful of months after that, but I would just start like joining. I kind of got very into like the Twitch speedrun community. I'd start lurking in chats and all that stuff. I'd go to like different Mario directories, and I would just see who was live at the time. Uh, and then I believe it was, let's see. So every so often in the Mario World community, for quite a while now, for many years now, usually every certain amount of months, there's usually like some type of tournament that's hosted. They pick a specific speedrun category. There's like a bracket and all that fun stuff where people just kind of do like races back and forth to see who can get the best, times overall. And I remember at the beginning, like towards the beginning to the middle of 2015, they were doing one for No Star World, which is, for anyone who isn't familiar, is the category where you beat the game without using any of the star warps. It's basically what a lot of speedrunners would call like warpless. Um, and I remember it was specifically Brams. I remember back then because I mostly watched him. He encouraged me to. He was like, oh, like I was like, oh, this kind of seemed interesting, and he was like, you should do it even if you've never played it before. There was a lot of other people who joined who also hadn't played it before, so I wasn't the only one. I immediately picked up an emulator. I bought some like really bad, third-party controller that broke within like a week or two. Um, but that's kind of how I got started. I remember I got so into it right away that after only about a week, like a week, week and a half of playing on emulator, I immediately ordered a SNES, and everything. Like I ordered the whole setup. Same thing I use today. I was honestly immediately hooked. I'm like, oh, I wish I could have started doing this earlier. Um, and that's kind of where I started. I mean, to this day, I still do Mario World. I've done other things, but I've definitely stayed close to my beginnings. I actually did forget. I did gloss over another part. I did actually before that, in between me discovering Mario World and actually running it, I did technically my first speed game was Mario Kart 8. I did like some casual cup speed runs because whatever, because that was like the first game I had on hand. But I would say like my true like proper establishment speedrunning was Mario World for sure. That's definitely the game I would associate myself with. Um, yeah, that's kind of my origin story. Um, and I guess I haven't gotten sick of the game after all these years somehow.
Mm-hmm.
In one way or another, I've kind of just learned how to adapt. What's really nice with Super Mario World is compared to, I mean, it depends on the Mario game, but definitely like, Mario World is a very like in terms of being able to like run it in different ways. There's a million different ways to run Mario World. With it being, you know, you got the map, you can walk anywhere you want, you can collect anything you want. If you go, there's like a separate category extension leaderboard for Super Mario World that has like 40 or 50 categories on top of like the 10 or whatever that are already on the main leaderboard. So even after you run this game for such a long time, you find something new to you, in a familiar. It's the same game. You're familiar with the game, but it just you find a new way to tackle it. Um, like for example, I first ran 11 exit, which again is kind of like the main like any percent no wrong warp kind of category. Uh, I think I first ran that probably when I first like it wasn't my first category, but I remember playing it like by the end of 2015, I had already done a run of it, but I hadn't touched specifically uh, a variant of it called Cloud until 2020, which is just it's using a more advanced glitch to kind of skip a bunch of the Bowser fight. So it's kind of cool that like 5-6 years later, I can find a way to completely you know almost do the same run, but also not at the same time. Mario World just has like so many different variants between cape, no cape, different glitches. If you go to the category extension board, Super Mario World's debatably the most broken Mario game ever. I feel like that's a very fair argument. So there's been a lot of ways to break the game in different ways. There's like I think probably the most infamous being like A2 exit. Like you can get past 96, you can do all these like glitch exits. Or I know another one is like No Star World. There's like variants of No Star World where you can do it faster than just the normal No Star World route. Like there's one called like Submap Warp where you warp from like one map to another. Like I think the route was like you go to Cookie Mountain, which is in um like what world like 4, it's like the twin bridges, and you warp all the way to the final castle Larry number 7. And then there's like another one they somehow found called like map sewing. I'm not gonna lie, there's like always new things coming out with Mario World that even I, as someone who's like overly familiar with this game, I still don't like understand a lot of this stuff after all these years because there's only so many things I can keep up there at once, and but there's constantly people working on just destroying this game even more somehow, and I just kind of find that amazing. That's kind of the big thing that kind of keeps this game alive, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Is it? Yeah.
I mean, I just learned a bunch about the game. Like, I'm familiar with it. I've ran 11 and watched plenty of it, but I'm so used to like the main four, I guess. That's 0, 11, No Star World, 96, because I always associate it. It reminds like Mario 3, like it's 100% warpless, no wrong warp, and then ace warp.
Yeah, what's interesting is that Mario World, the main categories have shifted so much over the years. Like when I first started, like, nowadays I would say the more favorably warpless category is probably all castles. There still are some people that run, like, particularly the Japanese community seems to still really like No Star World, but in general, I would say people, if they want to run warpless, they usually run all castles. I remember when I first started, all castles was just like a joke category that maybe one or two people raced on Speedruns Live when people used to use that all the time. Uh, and then I think it was like 2016, a couple people just decided to do a run of all castles again, and they realized, oh, this is like a way more fun workless category, and there was an entire tournament, and I think like within like a few like right around that time, people just quickly realized how good of a category it was, and they're like, okay, this is the new category. This is better than No Star World. I mean, obviously, No Star World's still going to be a main category because it is the fastest warpless, and it has a huge legacy, but it's been interesting. And then if you go the opposite way, with the any percent route, I mean, for a long time we just called it any percent, until like like what 2014 or whatever, because there wasn't any other way. And then out of nowhere, I mean even any percent itself changed before other big discoveries. There was the orb glitch that changed it quite a bit, and then Clad was discovered that completely ripped it apart. And then obviously there's been all these variants of Credits Warp Zero Exit. I think that happened sometime in 2015. So it's been interesting. I mean, I know some other like main Mario categories have evolved over time, but definitely compared to some other games, Mario Worlds has definitely changed quite a lot more. If you compare to like Super Mario Bros, it's just like any percent warpless, maybe minus world ending if you include that. But Mario World, it's just like Mario World could even who knows, maybe 5 years from now will be different. We'll find some other major thing that people really want to run, and it'll be considered a main category. Who knows? Um, it's just I just find that interesting, just how much the leaderboards can change. You can step away for a couple of years. Like if you were gone between like 2014 and 2016, if you came back after that 2 year period, it changed so much just in like the first year or two of me playing. It's kind of crazy. Um, Even nowadays with the categories being more stable, people are still finding ways to break it or whatever. Because when they first found those no Star World glitches that I was talking about earlier, people were like trying to argue, oh, could this be on the main board? It's kind of interesting that the categories are always being questioned. I know over the years, Seth Bling has found different ways to break 11 exit, and we've had to modify the rules. Like, we've had to tweak them a little bit over time just to make sure those like really weird random runs he does doesn't become record, because it doesn't really make sense to have those. It would just kill the category. It wouldn't be fun anymore. Um, I remember there was one where he basically just spent a bunch of time in Yoshi's Island 2 writing arbitrary code to just be able to instantly beat every level. And then he
Hmm.
just did that, and he happened to beat the 11 exit record by like 4 or 5 seconds. And technically, with the rules of the time, technically, it would have been accepted on the rules because there was like nothing saying it. I think the rules are pretty expansive at this point, and if something new was found, anyways, we would definitely find a way to tweak it, because it's just the categories are very established at this point. It's not like you go back like a decade ago when it was just like random spreadsheets and stuff. Um, Definitely, it's nice to have sites like Speedrun.com and stuff where things are very, very centralized. It makes it easy to to keep everyone on the same page, for
Hmm.
sure. Um, I know the Mario World community specifically used to be like decently like there used to be a whole separate. I mean, obviously today there still is like a separate Japanese scene in a lot of ways, but back then they had their own, an entirely different leaderboard and all that. I mean, a lot of American and Japanese speedrunners didn't even really know about what like which was really record and what times people had until probably like 2012, 2013 is like the earliest documentation I've found of like communities at least knowing about each other. um, I remember scrolling through like Speed Demo's archive. People don't really use it anymore, but it was popular form and all that back in like early 2010s. And I think it was finally in like 2012, 2013 that people were like, "Oh, there's Japanese people running this too." And nowadays it's just something you don't even think about, because everyone submits to speedrun.com, every community. Mario World has like specifically, being one of the bigger Mario communities, it has like a bunch of its own separate pockets, which is really interesting. Like there's an entire subset, not even just Japanese, but like the Portuguese, like Brazilian community specifically. There's a huge spin-off of that as well. Like they have their own like Twitch channels, Discord servers. It's kind of insane how much of a thing they even like host their own separate tournaments nowadays. Those communities have actually had more tournaments than the actual Mario World community lately. We've been kind of slacking on that front. Um, but it is really cool to see that, because the more people doing it, the more people know about the game, the bigger community grows. It's just kind of cool to see that it's kind of spread borders like that, instead of it being, because even when I started in 2015, it was still very fractured. Because like I was starting like right as like Discord was becoming a thing. So I remember like the first handful of months that I started, there wasn't even really a big like way to chat with people. Like I remember I was in like a Skype group with like 20 or 30 other speedrunners, like Mario World speedrunners. But like besides that, like and there was like some like wiki page, but compared to today, there really wasn't, anything. There wasn't like a I think there was some like random IRC channel or whatever, back when people used that more. But we're definitely spoiled today by things like Discord and Twitter and all that fun stuff. Um, it's definitely made speedrunning a lot easier, and
Hmm.
probably has evolved it more than people have realized.
Oh yeah, it's made it so much easier. Yeah, I started right when Discord popped off, so I guess I don't know what it was like to uh not use like a very centralized, easy, oh, there's chat, voice chat, everything's just right there, all the information you could ever want.
Yeah, yeah. Super Mario World was very early to get a Discord server. I think Discord's. I think I forget when it technically first started, but I think we like first started the server in like August of 2015 or something, like July or August. It was very early on, but I do still remember those first like couple months, like trying to voice call. I'd either like call with individual people on Skype, or I remember some random person like hosted like a TeamSpeak server. Even I remember using that a couple times. Um, you know, kind of weirdly nostalgic for it'd be cool to try some of that stuff again, but I definitely do not miss it. That's for sure. It's definitely nice just to be able to do whatever. I specifically remember the first couple of years of the Discord server. It was really active. We used to have like a 96 exit race every week. We called it the 96 weekly. Like every I think it was like every Friday night or whatever. Like everyone would just pop into a Discord call and we'd do a race. Last a couple hours between everyone. Um, in a lot of those regards, there's not really much of. It's kind of weird because obviously the Super Mario World community is still thriving, but in different ways it's kind of died off. It's kind of weird to explain. It's almost like it's like shed its shell a bit and just kind of evolved into something different. Because like 2015, 2016, people were constantly racing on Speedruns Live. People would go head to head and do all these things. I remember we have like a race channel in the Discord. People will constantly be like, "Hey, who wants to do a race today? Who wants to do a race today?" I remember there'd be days where I would race with like, 5 or 6 different people across like, you know, 5 different races, over the span of a few hours, just like constantly just be doing that. And you don't really see that anymore, unfortunately. That's one side of it that's kind of died out. Um, but I guess what's made up for it is the different communities doing like tournaments and all that stuff. So I guess it definitely is more active than ever. Because there's more people playing it, but it's just kind of evolved in ways that are hard to like compare and quantify. I guess it's kind of been weird as somebody who's been around for that long because I've seen so many communities kind of die out and I've seen new ones form. Like there's one main Mario World community, right? But inside that there's like different groups of people that come and go. Um like a lot of people that started when I first started, there's still a few that are around in some way or another, but most of them have not been playing the game in quite a long time. And since then I've seen different groups of people join, like 2017, I remember specifically there was a huge wave of people that came in after a certain tournament that I became friends with, and even a lot of those people stopped playing by like 2020. Um there's a lot of speedrunners who speedrun for quite a long time if you look at it, but like I would say on average, if you take the entire speedrun community, a lot of speedrunners don't speedrun for more than like a few years, or at least they don't like actively do it all the time after a few years. They kind of just like fizzle off. Um which is kind of sad in a way. I do think about a lot of the people that I used to play with and stuff, and they'll probably never be back. But that's definitely one sad side of speedrunning for quite a while. People find other things to do. People kind of, especially like around my age, like when I started, people are in middle school, high school, they have all the time in the world to do whatever. And then once they hit like college or they get like, an actual career or whatever, it kind of just tapers off. I'm kind of like in the middle of that. Like I still have time to speedrun here and there, but even I don't do it nearly as much because I have so many more obligations. Um, like I imagine like a year or two from now, I don't want to quit speedrunning, but I imagine like in the next couple of years, I probably will be able to do it even less in some way or another, depending on how things go. If I got to pay the bills and all that fun stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, it's just weird. Uh, I kind of just I guess you gotta kind of focus on the now, but sometimes I do kind of be like, oh, where's that person? It's it's kind of sad because you make so many close friends in the speedrun community, and sometimes there's just people that kind of completely just fizzle off, and you never really hear from them again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there are a few people that I know from when I first started that I still do talk to. So you definitely got to cherish the relationships that you are able to keep. Sure. Um, I'd say like some of my best friends online at this point are people that I've been like speedrunning, doing speedrun stuff with for 5+ years at this point. So which is something I never really thought about when I first joined this. Just I thought it was just some silly hobby. It's a bunch of nerds just with a timer, whatever. Um, but no, it's really like an actual community where you kind of just become part of something, and you kind of form a bubble around it, and you kind of get into people. You can kind of click with people that you actually know. I mean, I feel like that didn't really click with me fully 100% until like 2019 when I went to Summer Games Done Quick. I was able to actually go there for the week, and I got to meet a lot of the people that I had known since like 2015, 2016. Um, Back then I was like really shy. I did not do that much, but even just seeing them and just at least saying hi to them once and whatever, just kind of was like, oh, like these, I like actually made friends and stuff. Like I roomed with Twitch Master, which was a Mario World speedrunner who started at the exact same time, like the exact same tournament that I got into. It was just kind of surreal to have that moment and be like, oh, I'm here, I'm part of this thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it kind of you don't really realize that when you're just staring at a screen online. Sometimes, you just see these usernames and it's whatever. Um, physically actually seeing these people and stuff, it definitely ups that dynamic. Um, I'm definitely kind of hoping to do that more this summer. Actually, I'm trying to go. Well, I'm definitely going to SGQ, um, and I'm definitely trying my best to go to Pace as well. And I feel like
Mm.
I'll probably have another moment like that. I definitely realize it at this point how like real my friends are and stuff. But again, you just don't really realize it until you kind of take it to the next level in different ways. Um, it's honestly amazing that speedrunning's even at a point where we have all these events that people go to, all these physical gatherings. I mean, for quite a while it was really just GDQ, but now you have like all these local ones all over the world. It's kind of amazing that like no matter where you live, there's a chance that you can kind of go to one of these and meet people and stuff. No matter like what country or even different part of the country. In America they have depending on the year, there's different little things that pop up in different areas. Uh, kind of,
Yeah, it keeps getting
I
bigger, so
yeah,
things just
yeah,
keep popping up.
yeah. If you live even slightly close to some like big populated area like a city or whatever, there's definitely a chance at some point that there'll probably be something. Um, even like where I am, like I'm in New England, so like Boston's probably the most like notable city near me. You know, they have like PAX, like the gaming events. I know that GDQ does little stuff there sometimes too, even so. Um, yeah, so no matter where you are, it's kind of interesting. Speedrunning's kind of inevitable. Like you'll see it in one way or another. Where if you rewind the clock like a decade ago, in a lot of ways, it really still was like a niche thing that you only really knew about if you stumbled in a certain bubble. Like I stumbled into staff bullying. A lot of people wouldn't really know about it unless you did something like that back then. Where now you just kind of see whoever. You don't really need to follow a specific person. You'll just if you scroll through like YouTube or Twitter long enough, you'll probably find something speedrun related. Like even just on like I'll see like random viral tweets that will just be like loosely related to speedrunning. Like, you'll see a meme with like a speedrun timer or whatever. If you go back like 5 or 6 years ago, you never really saw that, but now I see that more than I'm surprised to see. Like I'll see some tweet go viral that even if it's not fully related to speedrunning, you'll be like kind of tied into it, and I'm kind of just shocked at how like easily widespread it is and how many people just kind of enjoy that now. Um,
Yeah, it used to be like you only really knew about it if you were in it, but now like it's almost like just a mainstream internet thing where even if you've never even thought about speedrunning, you kind of understand the gist of it. And that's why
yeah,
those things get so popular. I mean, especially with like GDQ getting 6-digit viewer counts. I mean,
yeah,
most of
yeah,
those people will never speedrun. That's the casual audience, but it was not like that for a long time.
yeah. The two biggest things by far, definitely, I would say that just kind of helped casualize speedrunning is definitely GDQ, just because of how simply big it reached. And then more recently in the last like 5 years, it's just like YouTubers, like obviously Summoning Soul's the first obvious one by far.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's not even a question. But even just after that, the wave that spawned, like creators like me and other people, and even just like other people that aren't speedrun creators, but they'll make like one video related to it. Like I've seen so many videos, where it's just like this one person makes this one like speedrun video copying Summoning Salt, whatever. And it's just kind of interesting to see that that's become like its own like niche genre in a way.
Mm-hmm.
um I've seen so many of them where it's like I saw a random one that was like I forget what it was, like blue shell yourself in Mario Kart. I guess I saw some random one where
I've seen
it's
that one. Yep.
yeah, yeah. It's just kind of interesting. You see like these people just make these one-off videos, where they kind of just when you think about it, you think about these YouTubers that just do these, they focus on it. Where now it's just like anyone can just make these, one-off videos. I see them so often.
Hmm.
All you really need is just like enough research and knowledge, and anyone can really make it if you put the time into it. Um, yeah, I would definitely say that's the biggest thing by far. The last few years specifically is just the rise in speedrun content creation. It really has become like its own serious genre on YouTube. Because like even when Summoning Salt like first started blowing up, I would still debate that speedrunning as a genre still wasn't really established on YouTube. He almost just felt like the one person that was able to do it, and I felt like it took a couple of years to really see it like settle in and establish. Once you got like Bismuth in there as well, and then I feel like for me, where I really realized like, oh, this is an actual YouTube genre, is when bigger creators popped up who like may not make purely 100% speedrun stuff, but like at least like hiding their content. We're talking people like Small Ant and stuff like that who like may not be speedrunning all the time, but like definitely have like hints of it in there, and they very much push that forward. I feel like that especially like casualized speedrunning, and now you have all these people that may have never even watched like a GDQ or whatever, but they at least know what it is, and they may click on some of that stuff.
Yeah,
It's just kind of
all of
interesting.
the like famous speedrunners are don't even really like I want to say properly, but like I can't think of the word, but
I
you
know
know
what
what
you
I mean.
mean.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
traditional, I guess. Like they're not like
yeah,
traditional speedrunners. They're like very obviously doing it for content creation purposes. And I mean
yeah.
that's fine. I mean it does the best obviously nowadays, but I feel like, you know, 5 years ago that's not how it was and you wouldn't be successful that way. It had to be like brought up into the more casual audience and then it just grew over time significantly. And yeah, now it's its own genre where, you know, the top speedrun creators are millions and millions of subs now.
Yeah. Well, I definitely think of casual speedrunning in terms of that. I think the first thing I think of is Easy Speezy, who's done, I feel like has done
Hmm.
any kind of like, speedrunning, whatever, and it's just like them doing an attempt, which, like, you can call it as much speedrunning as you want, but, whether you like it or not, it definitely has very much normalized it, just to a wider amount of people.
Yeah.
So I'm not really complaining in that regard. I know some people like, complain like, oh, this. I've heard a couple people that are like, oh, this isn't real speedrun content. Whatever. I could save things. It's not going to make a difference.
Hmm.
Personally, for me, how I view it is if one YouTuber succeeds with speedrunning, then it benefits everyone else because it just helps the genre as a whole. That's kind of how I view it. Like, if I see another creator's video go viral, I just kind of go, oh, cool. That means that this is actually like a big thing that people are interested in.
I
So
like
that's kind of how I
people
view it.
I like people that do it more casual and like specifically him like you said, like it's very casual, but he has such a big audience that it feels so casual that's like, oh, I could do that, and then that just grows the community even more. It like makes people, because back in the day people would only like watch the world records and be like, wow, could never do that, so they don't even try. But now it's so popular to the casual audience, you have more of a reason to give it a shot, and I think that's why it's just growing so much.
Yeah, there's definitely been more of an emphasis on just like you don't have to be good to speedrun. I feel like that was such a huge thing, especially like, when there wasn't any documentation or resources for anything, and you see all these top times, you just think, oh, these people just kind of talk to each other and probably just, do all these things. How am I going to get into it? But now that there's like resources for literally anything you can think of, and there's people doing all sorts of things, like anyone will do anything. I mean, again, that kind of ties into all these YouTubers doing, like you said, just doing like these casual things. I feel like the most recent thing I can think of is like a year ago. Whether you debate if it's a speed run or not, out of nowhere, Subway Surfers became like a thing that people try to like speed run because like it became like a TikTok trend and stuff like that. I could go into the if that's really a speed run or not, but either way, it did at least elevate, the popularity of speedrunning because at least, people are submitting it on speedrun.com and stuff. It was bringing more traffic to the website and people were actually becoming like, normalized the concept of having like a timer or at least trying to challenge themselves in the game. Um, I feel like that's just another huge thing in general. It's just like those challenge videos where it's like, trying to beat, New Super Mario Bros. Wii without touching a coin, those kind of things. Even though those aren't speedrunning, those still kind of like tie into the concept at least.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's
Like
kind of
speedrunning's a
interesting.
challenge, so like they're
Yeah,
challenge runs, and I mean, if you go to like category extensions, people speedrun challenges too, so it's all like intertwined.
yeah,
They're
it's
very
kind of
similar.
weird. Yeah, there's definitely an interesting line between like challenge run and speedrunning. There's definitely a huge overlap in those communities, but there definitely are different at the same time for sure.
Hmm.
Um, but I feel like they both benefit each other, for sure. There's a lot of YouTubers who have kind of based their careers off those kind of videos, and I feel like that probably brings a lot of people to speedrunning, whether directly or indirectly. Um, so I'm not complaining about that for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
a lot of speedrunners make like challenge run content too, so there's definitely a similarity between them. Whether like the audience likes it, they like it. it I mean, I guess they're different in the way where like you could do a challenge run really isn't a speed run unless you make it one. So like you have the challenge run and then the speed run is like built on top of it, like carrying it off because I mean, I've sped run plenty of challenge runs. So I know how it works, but
yeah,
it's almost funny because I feel like, you make a challenge run video like beating Mario without collecting a coin and it would do well, but like you speed run the no coins categories and people don't care as much.
yeah, it's kind of weird. I guess the closest thing I can relate is on the category extension board for Mario World, there's a one hand category. Um,
Oh yeah.
I could complain about that for quite a while. That leaderboard is quite a mess. I know some other like one hand leaderboards. They require you to use like specific controller, like the hardware and all that stuff. Because it makes sense. It's a one handed speed run. You don't want to give people advantages.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that's weird for that run on that leaderboard is they literally allow you to use any controller that you want. So that leaderboard has become completely ruined by people who just use like I'm trying to think. Like, I think one person used like a PlayStation controller and they just used the analog stick instead of the D-pad.
Mm-hmm.
It's just um, but yeah, but even then, it's interesting because like I feel like if I just told people, oh, I can beat the game one handed, people are like, oh, that's really cool. But then if I'm like, oh, I'm trying to beat the game one handed in X amount of minutes, like I'm grinding this run, like for some reason people just it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't seem to really gather as much traction, which is interesting. Um, I don't know. Um,
Don't worry,
really
I'm gonna show everyone one-handed speed running. It's gonna be so popular in a month, I'm sure.
hope so. Yeah. It's an underrated challenge for sure. People, it's not easy.
I
That's
can't
for
even say
sure.
I'd recommend it though because it hurts.
Oh, I don't recommend it. No,
So,
no. I grinded 11x one handed for like 3 or 4 days straight, and I'm pretty sure if I did it for another couple days, I probably would have gotten some form of carpet tunnel because I was almost feeling it after that.
mm-hmm.
Um, um, yeah, which I guess I understand why the leaderboard maybe allowed any controller to do that, but I don't know. I could go down an entire discussion about certain leaderboard rules and all that. I don't know. It really depends on the category and all that. But I remember one of the runners literally there's like a specific one-handed SNES controller where it's just like if I take my SNES controller here, like it just has like this circle and they somehow like they just like slap the D-pad on the side of it and you just use like one hand, or I think the
Mm.
D-pad's on one side and then everything else is on the other side. I don't know. That's kind of a weird overlap of speedrunning and challenge runs because like in speedrunning leaderboards you want to keep it consistent and fair, but like challenge runs it's really just like up to like whoever wants to do it. It's their rules. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's kind of a weird like gray area of like having challenge runs as speed runs. Um,
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that specifically with the controllers, because so the Mario World one hand you can use whatever you want, but Mario one you have to use the original because
yeah,
that's like part of the challenge, I guess. I guess like the thing is if you played on keyboard, you could make it super easy, and that like defeats the purpose of the challenge. But like it would still work for like if that's just how you want to run any percent because maybe you only have one hand to use, then like that's fair. Like you
yeah,
can, but uh the specific point of that challenge is to use it on the original controller, so that's why that the rule is like that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the 11 exit. I have to check again because it's been so long, but I'm pretty sure the one-handed record uses keyboard, which would make sense if you're allowed to use whatever. I remember I tried to make a stink about it at one point. You know, actually, I am a Mario World mod, so I did bring it up, and no one else seemed to care enough, so I
Mhm.
just kind of let it sit. It's not really a hugely contested run, anyways. So maybe if it did become one, maybe that would change. But um, I don't know. It's really just a community thing for sure,
Mhm.
but it just is weird with speedrunning. Um, I mean that kind of just ties into the overall discussion of just like what should be allowed for speedrunning. You know, there's a huge controversy of keyboards and all that fun stuff. Um, Honestly, I really don't care for especially if it's like an NES or Super Nintendo game where a lot of people are emulating it anyways. I feel like just use whatever you want. I don't know. That's a very personalized thing, but I it's been interesting to see that discussion rise more and more, especially I feel like when I first started, that wasn't really even a discussion because a lot of leaderboards weren't even really like that flourishing enough for that to even be a discussion. Um, where nowadays there's so many people, people can people can run anything on any device. So a lot of people are just running stuff on emulator. So it's become like such a huge hot button issue in certain things. Um, Especially the casual community seems to care more about it than the actual speedrun community in a lot of ways. A lot of speedrun communities don't really care. They either just especially like retro games are just like whatever, people are running on emulator, people are going to do different things, like as long as you're not like cheating, or as long as you're not using like a horribly inaccurate emulator, then
Mhm.
no one cares. Yeah, people even run stuff on their phones now. Yeah, there are some like accurate enough. I know at least for Super Nintendo there is like some accurate enough emulators where we have allowed people to run on mobile devices.
Mm.
um which is interesting. If you go back a handful of years, I would have never thought that it'd be accepting a phone run. It's it's weird to see how much that's the kind of the I mean, I guess it is nice too because it kind of just shows how easily accessible and how huge speedrunning has become as a whole. That the fact that like people are just casually taking out their phones and just trying to you know speedrun a game now. Like again, you wouldn't have seen that X amount of years ago. So even though it is kind of a headache for like leaderboard's sake and all that stuff, it is also nice because it means that more casual people are coming out and trying to participate at least. Um, uh, but I guess why for me it's not really a huge issue anyways is that you never see top like for the most part you never see like the top speedruns doing a lot of that stuff anyways. They usually kind of conform to what everyone else is doing. Like for example in Super Mario World, like a lot of the top well, Super Mario World's kind of a weird example because it's kind of iffy. There's been a debate about I forget when the Nintendo like re-released their couple first consoles. There was like the NES and the Super Nintendo Classic or whatever, and there's been a huge debate about the SNES Classic because we found out it actually is faster. I think it has to do with like how it like emulates lag or something. I don't
Mm.
want to speak on the technicals because I'm not the most like I don't know all of it, but there's been a huge debate because it's slightly faster, and the biggest debate has been in like the short categories and 11 exit because I believe both 11 exit glitchless and 11 exit orb have the record with SNES Classic now, and there's a huge debate over that about like using different hardware and stuff. But before that came out, before that became a headache, all the top runners would just go on official hardware. I mean, that's part of the reason why I got it so quickly myself, because I was just like, oh, all the cool kids are on actual console, let me get one as well.
Yep.
Um, that's kind of how a lot of communities are. I mean, obviously there are different exceptions. Um, Even though if you go to Super Mario, Mario 1 as well, obviously there are growing emulator runners, but even still to this day a lot of the top runners, they prefer to just go to real hardware.
Mhm.
um that's just kind of how it is, so I'm not really too concerned in that regard. At the end of
Yeah.
the day, it's really just a community thing. I feel like a lot of people they try to be like they try to like fit rules across like speedrunning everything, but
Mhm.
that's just not how speedrunning works. Like
Oh
speedrun
yeah. No.
communities are so individualized.
Mhm.
Like um,
No,
even if you
each
just
game has to
I
have
don't
their
know.
own rules. Even some categories have their own rules in a game.
Yeah,
Like that's just how it
yeah,
is. You have to read up. You can't, I don't
yeah,
know, make it all under one umbrella or something. Like that's just not how it works. Everything's different. But yeah,
yeah.
my view on the whole thing is I think, I mean, this is just my opinion too, but I think that the game should be accurate to the original thing it was released on as possible. And so,
Yeah.
like for NES, that's fantastic because NES emulators emulate it like 100% perfectly, and I love that. But then there's like Mario 64. Well, not Mario, just Nintendo 64. It's like, well,
Yeah.
that emulator is kind of weird. And then it's even like the whole thing about the Mario 64, like VC being faster, like that's still an emulator, even though it's like official. I don't know why official emulators are always ass. It's
Yeah.
weird.
I mean,
Well,
it just ties
not
into
not
SNES
even
Classic as
ass, but
well.
just like not accurate, I guess.
Yeah, that's my gripe with the SNES Classic as well. Like you would have thought by now, like, um, like SNES isn't as 100% as NES. Like there definitely are some more caveats to it, but like SNES is definitely a close runner-up to being like perfect in terms of like Nintendo console emulation.
Hmm.
So you would think by now there wouldn't really be a negligible difference with if they released it on official emulators and hardware, but there still is.
Hmm.
Um, like what's interesting is that the one category that will never be ruined by SNES Classic is 11 Exit Cloud because you just can't like it doesn't emulate Cloud properly, which is interesting. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Um,
I forget
so
how
it's just,
everything like very specific SNES console that game is. It's funny.
yeah, it's weird. But I mean, in certain ways, it has just like I don't know. People should run on it, but it definitely. I usually like I have my own strong opinions, but I usually try to stay out of the arguments. It's like I'm just gonna
Yeah.
let people run what they want to run on. Like
Yeah, at the end
especially
of the day,
nowadays.
you can run whatever. Like
Yeah.
you
Um,
you could completely reject the rules and do whatever you want. You just can't submit it then, which is fine. Like
yeah.
again, you don't have to abide by any rules. You can just do whatever the hell you want. It's fine. Just
Yeah.
if you're expecting to be like submitted to the leaderboards, like knowingly breaking a rule, it's not going to be accepted. But I
Yeah.
mean, but yeah.
SMW is just like the Wild West in terms of rules. I mean, just between the SNES Classic issue and then also like what Limestoners brought up in chat, the run ahead argument.
Mm,
For anyone who
yeah.
isn't familiar, like some emulators have like used this feature called like run ahead, where it tries to make up for like I think it makes it tries to make up for like lag frames and emulators and stuff. It'll like skip forward and like it'll try to sync up to where it actually should be. I know that certain communities are I'm like pretty sure Mario 1 has banned that.
Yeah,
Um,
it was what Meeson
yeah,
had a
Messin,
run
yeah,
ahead
yeah,
or Messin, yeah. It had a run
yeah,
ahead feature. So someone in the community actually made their own version of it that removes that feature,
yeah,
so it was fun.
yeah. Yeah, it's been completely opposite in the Super Nintendo, or at least Super Mario World community. I forget which prominent emulator uses it, because I don't really use emulators nowadays, um, but people started using it in runs, like, and it's on Super Mario World, it's very noticeable. There's been some huge examples of it breaking the game. Like for example, sometimes if you like hit a switch in a Switch Palace, you'll press the switch and it just doesn't activate, like with run ahead.
Okay.
Um, or there's some where you'll run past a door and then it'll teleport you back to the door and you'll enter it. So you can just miss a door and still enter it. Um, I don't know.
Okay.
I think if it's completely breaking the game like that, like maybe if there weren't any proven advantages or like random things breaking, but if it's breaking the game, I don't see why it should be allowed. Like if it's
Hmm.
not acting normally, if you can press a switch and it doesn't activate, then I don't see why that should be allowed.
Yeah, that's just not accurate.
Yeah. I don't know. But then it's weird. Super Mario World is weird because over the last like few years, there's been a growing Kaizo community that has become completely separate from vanilla Mario World speedrunning. Like a lot of these people in these two different communities, like they know each other, but they don't really, always do stuff with each other. They're two very they used
Hmm.
to be very together in different ways, but I would say they're very individualized now. And the Kaizo community specifically really enjoys Run Ahead, which I mean I guess kind of makes sense, maybe with like some of the harder stuff in there, like whatever, if they want to do that, they can do that. But a lot of that sentiment has leaked into the vanilla community, and I
Mm.
don't know. That's just a huge debate that I'm probably never gonna fully win. But I personally, I don't know. Yeah, there's always the discussions of splitting the leaderboards, but it's like, what point is it to where it becomes ridiculous to split it? Because you could just start splitting it like 10 different ways, but then that just looks like what's the point of leaderboards after a certain point? It's just kind of weird.
Yeah.
Um,
I know they already split it by cloud, orb, and glitchless. And I mean,
yeah,
that's cool, but I miss like having it all on one leaderboard because it has the sorting feature anyway, so you could sort between them. And I guess
Yeah,
people just don't really use that too much, unfortunately, so they had to make it more obvious. But I
yeah.
like keeping track of what placement I was at a certain time, and now that's all thrown out the way because the leaderboards changed for that specifically.
Yeah, that's been a huge debate. I forget when I'm gonna guess. I forget when it happened. I'm gonna guess probably 2020 or whatever, when everyone was inside and there was a everyone was doing whatever.
Hmm.
I think that's when it changed. I don't know. I see both sides to it. I definitely did enjoy it having all together because again, like you said, you see your place overall and you kind of can see yourself climbing up at different times. But at the same time, I actually do kind of like the newer one, separate boards. It is kind of nice to see it separately. Like, you can see the separate records and easily all that. And
Hmm.
it's kind of cool to know that I'm like 20th place in this and I'm also 11th in this variant. But I don't know. That's an issue where I'm very in the middle on.
I'm in the middle
But
too. Like, it'd be
yeah,
nice if both were somehow an option. Like, if
yeah,
you could do that sorting feature that there originally was, but it was like more obvious that you could sort it that way because you
yeah.
had to like go to the filters and then find the thing. So I understand why people never really knew about it.
That's definitely more of a speedrun.com issue than
Oh, yeah.
Mario World issue for sure. I imagine there's probably other communities that have gone through other stupid things like that. Um,
Well, let me tell you about separating NTSC and PAL. Oof, fun
Ooh, yeah,
times.
yeah, yeah.
That was all manual work, but I
I was
mean
kind of
that's
surprised to see that
different.
happen. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean we've wanted to do it forever, but I actually never knew why they kept it on the same boards because at least for Mario 1, NTSC and PAL are completely different. Like the controls are different. Like the strats are different. Everything is different. So it didn't make sense. Like it's almost more different than the All Stars version, which has its separate leaderboard. So it's like okay,
yeah,
but I guess no one did it because there's no way to easily separate it. So I we had to do it the hard way. Everything manually done. So that was fun. That was a fun like 3 hours of my life.
yeah. I can imagine. I mean, it's one of the biggest games with most notable runs ever. I can only imagine going
Luckily, there
through
were
all
like
that.
only less than 100 PAL runs in total.
Good.
So, but I
Yeah.
mean that's still a lot.
Yeah. Super Mario World PAL is interesting as well. I would debate it's not as different as. I don't know. The biggest thing by far in Mario World PAL is how the cape controls. The cape is way harder to control.
Hmm.
Um, like you have to normally in Super Mario World you can kind of just tap left casually every like couple seconds whatever. Where
Hmm.
in this, like if you want to stay the same height, you have to be like constantly like you cannot keep flight in the air.
Hmm.
Um, the only way to really keep your flight is if you're just spin flying or if you just constantly like dive bomb back and forth. Um, I'm trying to think what else. Um, I don't know, but it definitely becomes a different game, 'cause how sped up it is.
Hmm.
Mario just goes way faster. Um, I know there's a category extension. There's 96 PAL on NTSC where you run the PAL version on an NTSC
Oh
console.
no.
Um, so instead of it being fast PAL, you get the fast frame rate and the fast PAL movement that they did to make up for the frame rate, which you now don't have to deal with. So,
So it's just
um,
pain.
yeah, it's actually kind of I would never run it seriously, but it is a
Hmm.
fun like one-off joke run. There are a few runs on the board. I forget what the record is. I feel like hypothetically it probably could be faster than the actual 96 record if it was optimized, but who wants to do that?
No.
I don't know. I think I did one run like 5 years ago and I got like I don't know some time like 5 minutes off my PB or something, my
Hmm.
actual PB. Um, but yeah, different regions definitely interesting. PAL versus NTSC for older consoles. I feel like in Mario World it's not really as much. There definitely are some PAL runs on the leaderboards, but I don't think it's really enough to warrant anything, and I don't think there's enough of a demand. There definitely was more of a demand in Mario One, I know for sure.
Hmm.
Um, because I feel like PAL, I don't know, there's definitely not as much like glitches or anything. I don't even know if you could do all the glitches in PAL just because of how the physics are different. You could probably do them, but they wouldn't be as easy. Um, so
Yeah. In
I don't
Mario
know.
1, the PAL task is faster than NTSC.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's a weird thing. So people are always like, "Oh, if you tie the tasks in this category extension, you could beat it in PAL though." So it's like, "No, they're very different. Let's just separate them,
yeah,
please."
yeah. It's kind of interesting having to do all the separations with all stars and all that. I'm glad Mario World doesn't really have that random separation. It's just kind of, its own game. Um,
Hmm.
I guess the closest thing is like the Game Boy Advance re-release, Super Mario Advance 2, but that has like its own entirely separate leaderboard.
Hmm.
So that's actually kind of a unique speedrun on its own. I've done it. I've never like optimized my times, but I have ran that a few times. It's very interesting. What's interesting is that some of the records are actually they may not be nowadays because I think Mario World's the main categories on the actual game become optimized enough. But I know at certain points that the GBA World records have been faster than the Mario World SNES records, which is
Hmm.
interesting. Just because the game runs faster, like I think like the overworld movement and the cutscenes and stuff are faster or something like that. So even though you can't like do all there's like no glitches. I think the only glitch you can do is you can do like a clip in like Force Evolution 2, which you can do in the normal game, but like you can't do like all the like Mario World infamously has a bunch of glitches where you can like duplicate blocks and all that. You can't do any of that stuff in the Game Boy Advance, but um people hate on that game more than they really should. I feel like people just kind of you know hate on it just because it's a watered down Mario World. But what's funny is that it's actually how a lot of speedrunners got introduced to the actual game. One person I know specifically, I'm mentioning him a lot, but that's just because it's one of the first speedrunners I met in the Mario World community. But I know specifically Brams started running Mario World way back then just because he had played the Game Boy Advance version when he was younger. And I know for a fact a few other speedrunners did that as well. Um, so that is kind of cool to see that for sure. Um, but I don't know. There's also I'm trying to think. There's another version of Mario World 2. There's like an arcade version that was available on specific arcade machines, and we've actually gotten a hold of the ROM of it. Um, you basically can like skip cutscenes and all that stuff, and you can like start from any world you want.
Hmm.
Um, for some reason on console, it like randomly crashes sometimes after like one of the castle cutscenes in like World 5 or whatever. I don't know why. Um, but that's interesting as well. You could probably save time on that version too, but no one cares to do it. It's kind of interesting, like all these weird like alternate versions of a main game. I know like Mario One kind of has that in certain senses too. Kind of, there's like it's kind of different, but you got like All Night Nippon and stuff like that. It's kind of interesting to see like different variants of games that a lot of people speedrun.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know, but
Yeah, usually the different versions are different enough where they're their own thing. Like, what was it Mario Deluxe on Game Boy Color? Like that just plays completely differently, so it's its own thing. I
yeah,
think that record's faster than in
it
like
is.
NES.
Yeah,
So, and then
yeah,
I remember having Mario Advance 1, so that was Mario 2, which is so different. So like they're just different games almost. So I
yeah.
I,
All the
I know
advanced
why
ports.
it's their own thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
interesting dealing with re-releases and stuff. Especially the older games too, because they get released way more often. Because every X amount of years, Nintendo is like, oh, we got to re-release it again.
Mhm.
Like with Mario World, it was like first like Wii Virtual Console, and then they did it again on, like the Wii U and 3DS, and then there was the SNES Classic, and now there's like Switch Online.
Mhm.
Um, which is
Yeah.
kind of a headache. Every console generation, there's like a new headache to deal with.
Yeah. But
Um,
those are emulation rather than like a
yeah,
full-on re-release. So I guess that's a
yeah,
bit different.
yeah, yeah, true. Um, yeah, I feel like at this point they probably are. I feel like we're at the point where they probably wouldn't completely remake the games again. I feel like we're kind of past that stage. Um,
Probably, yeah.
yeah, I feel like that died out around like Game Boy Advance era. Um, but yeah, it is interesting to deal with that versus modern games where it's like, okay, it's just on this one system. But if you have like this old classic game that's ported to every system, you have to worry about it every single time it comes out on a different,
Mhm.
thing. Um, like I know on the 3DS Virtual Console version of Super Mario World, it's very easy to press left and right at the same time because you can literally just use the circle pad for one and the D-pad for the other.
Mm.
Um, which in general, I mean, the huge advantage that it gives you is notably in water levels you can go faster, and also if you're in like a pea balloon, but that doesn't really happen that often. But yeah, I remember there was one person that did it in tubular where you can grab a pea balloon and they beat the level in like half the time that it would normally take or whatever on the 3DS, which is funny. But
Hmm.
those are so like rare cases that usually like no one's gonna run on a 3DS and no one's gonna take the time to figure out if they can get the game faster, whatever. Um, I mean, that's why you ban stuff like left plus,
Hmm.
inhuman inputs, anyways. Um,
Something you couldn't do on the original release.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. I mean, at least I know both with Mario 1 and Mario World, you definitely can if you have the right D-pad. But yeah, in most circumstances, yeah, you're not going to be doing left and right. Um, I
Yeah,
know it.
not
Yeah,
without like unofficial modifications, which are usually a no-no.
yeah. I know at one point one of the D-pads I had on one of my controllers when I was doing 11 exit runs became weird enough that it actually did start randomly doing left right. Which became
Hmm.
really annoying. I think I was doing a no cape run and a no cape 11 exit. You hop into a Lakitu cloud in Star World 3. Um, and if you're pressing L and R while you're in the cloud, it will just like shoot you way further than you'd expect. I remember like you can just like shoot through blocks basically.
Hmm.
And I remember I accidentally did that in a run once out of nowhere. My D-pad just did that one day, which is interesting. Um, that's kind of an interesting aspect of speedrunning too. At least with like older controllers and stuff. You speedrun for so long that you go through so many different controllers, and also one thing I never thought of when I first started running was the specific rubbers inside the controllers as well. Hold
Hmm.
the different D-pad and all that. I've gone through so many sets of both controllers and individual rubbers that I've swapped in and out of controllers. I mean, there's like a couple specific sites that a lot of speedrunners order from just to get like new sets of controller rubbers to put inside like their NES and SNES controllers.
I replace
Um,
mine like monthly. Yeah.
do you? Wow. Yeah.
Hmm.
I'd
Well,
say I
it's
replaced
funny.
mine.
I have pictures of that, like, the part you push down is connected to like the little base. It would
Yeah.
be like in half. And it hasn't happened more frequently. They just kind of get worn out in a month and then I replace them and then it feels better. But yeah, like back when I first started, I think when I was more 90%, where you had to do all the bullshit tiny
Yeah.
taps, it would just rip within like a month and it's like, well, next one, it would
I
rip.
can.
Oh,
Yeah.
next one.
I can imagine for that kind of run, especially if you're grinding it like daily or at least every couple days. I can imagine that would
Hmm.
wore down pretty quick. Um,
Oh
I'd
yeah.
say from my end, I don't know. I'd probably replace mine maybe. I mean, it's hard because I have school and stuff, so I don't consistently do it. But I probably replace mine every half a year. So at this point, I've probably replaced them like, I mean, easily it's in the double digits for sure. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, that's kind of an interesting aspect that I never thought about at first. There's definitely been some certain controllers and D-pads that have been better than others, or controllers. Like actually, I had one controller that I just had to officially retire because, for 11 exit cloud, the main setup that people do nowadays is when you collect the cloud, you have to hold you have to hold the L and R triggers and the X button, or else you won't get the cloud, while you're doing the swap.
Hmm.
And for some reason, the right trigger on the controller was barely working anymore. Like I took out the rubbers, I cleaned out the controller, like I swapped everything. I even tried swapping the board, and no matter what, that controller just wouldn't want to press R. Um,
Hmm.
so I had to completely just switch controllers, and I went back to a controller that I used a while ago. And what's funny on that D-pad is it likes to give me like specific like one frame like jump. Like for example, in Mario World, you can duck jump while still having P speed, but it's like a frame perfect jump.
Hmm.
But for some reason, my D-pad that I have on the controller I went back to like just loves to do it all the time. So when I'm grinding 11 exit, I do it an alarming amount of times, and I imagine from outside perspective that probably looks weird, but I promise it's just the D-pad.
Hmm.
There's a couple specific jumps in that run where the set of inputs I do, it just happens to, it just naturally will do it half the time, which is funny. You can also do it with like duck flies as well, which looks really janky, but it does happen. Um, yeah, it's funny how that's not really never something you think about when you like first get into it. It's like how like specific controllers and even just like how your control like just the individual controller and the individual components of it, like how important that can really be. Um, I know at certain points, like specific speedrunners have sold different controllers to try to give speedrunners, like they'll do certain things to controllers or they'll like custom make something. Um,
Try to increase the durability and all that. Yeah.
yeah, I know for a fact that happened specifically in Mario World. I remember like a speedrunner Akisto, like he used to have like some of the world records and stuff. Like would sell some of his, like he would just, it wasn't anything special. He literally would just like fully clean up the controllers and put in like these new specific pads and stuff. But a lot of speedrunners will do stuff like that, which is interesting. There's like a whole market for that. Basically, it's kind of crazy.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know, but that's just something I found interesting. It's just that's definitely something you definitely don't think about until you start doing it long term,
Yeah.
which is interesting.
I retired a
Um,
SNES controller because the LNR didn't work. So I know.
Yeah, yeah. I remember one of the first when I got my SNES, like I bought it as a bundle on eBay, and
Mm-hmm.
uh one of the controllers just didn't press like left and right or whatever. Yeah, that can happen, unfortunately. Sometimes you have to go through the controller lottery. I probably have like 5 or 6 SNES controllers sitting between my office and like in my little storage bin I have. I have an entire like huge Ziploc bag just full of like controller components. Not even full controllers. Like I have like random circuit boards and like different, shells that I've like swapped and stuff over the years. Um it's kind of interesting that it comes down to like it's like almost a whole science to it. You kind of just have to figure out what works best in your situation. Um like when I was trying to find a new controller setup after my R button didn't work, I just went through like 3 different controllers and like 2 different circuit boards to find something that like seemed good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because there's all these little things. Like I think the biggest issues I've had with SNES controllers is the shoulder buttons not being good enough, or the other specific thing is the D-pad. Like after a certain amount of time, D-pads like there's almost like a right amount of stiffness you want to a D-pad when you're playing Mario World. Like if it's way too stiff, it's annoying for like doing like directional inputs and stuff if you're like holding like down and right at a specific time or whatever. Or if it's like too loose, like I don't know, it's weird. There's almost like a Goldilocks to some of this where it's like you want certain things to be just right. Um and you
You
just
never
have to
quite get there though.
you never do. You basically have to get to a point where you waste so much time that eventually you're like, okay, this is good enough. I'm never going to get better than this.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely how I feel. Like honestly, the D-pad I have right now is a little more stiff than I'd like it, but I'm probably not gonna get something better out of the entire collection I have. So I'm just gonna use it until it's done. Um,
Yep.
yeah, it's weird how that goes, but um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I never thought I'd invest so much money and stuff just in the controller part of it for sure.
Yep.
Um,
Luckily, the controller rubbers are fairly cheap. I
they are,
usually only
yeah.
get one controller. I get like a refurbished one from someone I trust. So I know
Mm,
like it's in good condition and then I just replace the rubbers forever.
yeah, I remember.
Oh, my internet go out? Oh shit. It's been a while since that's happened. Huh. Hmm. Hello?
Yep. Hello.
Huh. Apparently my internet went out. Hmm.
Interesting.
It's been a while since that's happened. During one of these at least. Last time was like 2 months ago. Huh.
Interesting.
Come on, OBS. There you are. Good. Hello, we live? I think so. Yeah, weird. Well, hopefully that doesn't happen again. Uh,
Alrighty.
oh,
Interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's been a while. I was actually proud of my internet for behaving for once, but I guess not. Oh well.
Internet
Anyway,
feel like that. Yep.
oh mine is ass. It always
Uh,
has been, so I'm used to it. But I was just happy. It's been like 2 months. I was happy, but oh well. And
yeah.
anyway, where were we?
Oh god, I don't know. We were talking about like controller
Yeah,
stuff. I don't know. I feel like I exhausted that topic.
fair enough.
um, yeah.
Maybe my
You just,
internet said shut up about controllers already.
yeah, yeah. But it's just kind of interesting all the little things that go into it. Like all the rubber stuff, and then there's also like when I started practicing, I eventually got a flash cart.
Mm-hmm.
And I eventually upgraded my flash cart to something better. It's you never really think about all these hidden costs. But I guess that is the nice thing about speedrunning is you can just run on emulator and stuff too. But things have gotten pretty advanced nowadays, where at least for like the first few Nintendo console generations, it's very easy to like if you put some money into it, you can get a setup and you can practice very easily. There's like practice carts and all that fun stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the Super Mario World Flash card and like the Super Mario Bros. Super Mario World Practice ROM and like this Super Mario Bros. Ones are both some like the most fleshed out
Oh yeah.
practice devices I've ever seen. Um, it's honestly amazing how dedicated the community's been to like working towards that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I feel like every like every title, like there's so many between like the NES and SNES, and even N64 have like their, I know like Mario, Mario 64 and all that fun stuff. There's a whole community of people just working on those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I definitely would not be. I mean, I feel like eventually I probably would have gotten more stuff together because I was able to practice on emulator and stuff. But if it wasn't for the Super Mario World practice cart that ISO Freeze or Dots Are Cool made, I definitely wouldn't have gotten as comfortable with Mario World as quickly as I did, for sure. Um, we're definitely very spoiled by stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, back in the day, there were no like save states or anything, so you'd have to like get a bunch of lives, and then just keep dying, getting your power ups back if you want to practice
yeah,
things. Not like that
and then
anymore.
yeah, I remember for the flash before the flash cart, or before the I had the flash cart and the practice cart. I used a for the SNES. There's like it's called the Nokitech Game Saver. It's just like
Mm,
this
yeah.
device you plug into the console and you plug your cartridge in. Yeah, it's literally just save states on console. I remember most runners used to use that for like throughout the early 2010s. It's all what runners used. It's very primitive now, but it that was definitely a huge stepping stone for a lot of speedrunners back then. Um, I know for a fact, like people like Dram and all those people that really started like the modern American community, at least as we know today. If it wasn't for stuff like Game Saver, it wouldn't have been as advanced as it would have become.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, it's it's interesting seeing how much it like just like you give it 5 years and you go from having to use this really primitive tool to just having like literally everything at the sense of your fingertips. Um, it's
Yeah.
it's quite amazing how that happens. Um, like nowadays for Mario World, you can literally look up any little thing you want. I mean, we have like a wiki with every single individual level with all these individual strats, and we have like all these like route guides, and I mean, just the fact that Discord exists, like all these individual channels. Um, like honestly, like speedrunners starting now are very spoiled. Like they can just do whatever. Um, it's definitely what like there's a lot of people that can just like naturally get good at a speedrun really quickly, but especially today, like there's a ton of people like it's easier than ever to just pick up a game and get good at it really quick if you're like that kind of person that can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, I would say for me, honestly, no matter like what, I've always been the kind of speedrunner that takes like a really long time to improve in comparison to other people. Um, I feel like I don't know. I don't like to compare myself against other speedrunners, but there definitely are people that just naturally can progress way quicker than others. Like honestly, I mean, I don't want to just throw his name out there, but the first I think of like obvious is like Nifsky. Like he gets improvements like left and right. Like he grinds like crazy and all that, and he can just like do things. It's honestly crazy what he's able to achieve. Um, but for me, like I feel like I'm the kind of person that just has to like sit there and grind specific things for like way long, like compared to other people. Like even just in Mario World, like I again, I don't like to compare myself against other people, but like I have over the years, and it definitely has taken me longer to like do the same things that a lot of other people have. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I guess that is the beauty of speedrunning. I mean, you can go at your own pace, but that definitely can be discouraging at times. It's way too easy to compare yourself against other people. I kind of hate that.
I mean,
Um,
that is part of like the point of it too. Like
yeah,
with leaderboards, you're literally comparing yourself to other people, so.
yeah, yeah. I guess it's all about like mindset, really. Um, how you try to
Mm-hmm.
think about it. Um, I don't know. I've been trying to be better about it. Um,
I've
I mean,
struggled with it plenty too, so I still do. So
yeah,
it's hard.
yeah. I have phases where I just like can't really get anything because all I just think about is just like, okay, like how do I get in front of this person or whatever? How do like why can I not, whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That's just kind of a thing. What sucks is that it's not really just like something you get rid of too. It really comes in waves for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know. I just try to have fun with it more nowadays. Especially in runs. Like I just one thing I do during runs nowadays is I like hide my splits whenever I can. I don't even like look at my splits unless I need to in specific cases. I mean, it depends on the speed run. There's definitely some speed
Mm-hmm.
runs where you need to like, you know, for Mario 1, you're probably gonna want to look at it more with like frame rules and stuff. But
Yep.
uh, at least for Mario World, you don't really have to worry about that. So I usually just like keep my splits as hidden as I need to, and then I don't have to really worry about that. Because I'm definitely like in my case, I'm like honestly a very anxious person. Even just like something silly, like certain speedrun things, like I get like way more anxious than I ever should. So I have to do little things like that to even like get to some of the levels I've been able to in terms of certain categories.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing that specifically. I've been grinding over the last couple of years, more specifically 11x a cloud, and it's gotten to a point where I have like a pretty decent like higher level time. So like, it gets to the point where I have to do like way tighter things, and it just kind of builds more and more anxiety on top of the anxiety I already had to begin with. Um,
That's how it
it doesn't,
goes. Yep.
yeah, and it doesn't help staring at all these numbers that are constantly moving. um, so I usually try to keep my splits like, with my dual monitor setup, I'm like, I'm sitting right here and I just like yank my splits all the way over here.
Mm.
Like the last few PBs I've gotten, I don't even know I got a PB until I hit the split button at the end. Um, that's at least how I've run it, but I know not every speedrunner can do that in different games, but I definitely that's been a huge thing I've struggled to. It's just like in the moment stuff like anxiety and just like how I think about the runs as they go. Um, that's probably been like one of my biggest speedrun struggles because I've had periods of time where I just like can't do anything for like a couple months because those kinds of feelings just like get the best of me. And I'll
Mm-hmm.
get runs to certain places, but then that stuff just kind of like takes over and I just like can't do anything. Um,
Yeah.
I
What
don't
I've
know.
learned, numbers suck. Just all
Yeah,
everywhere.
yeah,
Numbers just cause anxiety. I don't know why. They just do.
yeah. Or sometimes if I have to look at my splits, I'll just like change them to splits that I know aren't my splits or whatever. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's been some times where I just don't compare, or if I need to compare, I'll compare against like line split has been really nice because they, you can compare against like, they can like average out your splits now and stuff too, which is kind of nice.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I usually do stuff like that nowadays. I just compare against like average splits, which is nice instead of just having like, that's especially nice for runs that start with like, you'll get like, the entire run will be like tied with PP, and then you'll get like this one impossible split at the end that's like sucks to run against. It's nice
Mm-hmm.
to have like that time save spread out. Um,
Yeah, balanced. So
yeah,
those
yeah.
are nice splits to have.
Yeah, that's debatably one of the most useful live split features, honestly, for me. Um, I don't know. I'm trying to think of what else in that regard, but I don't know. It's just it's just been constantly evolving how I handle like different feelings while I'm running. It's just weird. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I kind of want to try that honestly, but it's hard for me because with the way I have OBS set up, it's on my main monitor that I'm looking at right now. So chat's just right here, and then here's the screen that people see, which obviously has splits on it. So they're just
yeah,
right there. So it's just like
yeah.
impossible to not see for me. So,
It definitely depends on your setup for sure. It's very individualized. Like
hmm
especially if you only like for anyone who has like one monitor, it's like whatever, almost impossible I can imagine.
yeah.
But
I feel like if I did that, I'd finish a lot more runs though. So,
yeah,
hmm,
yeah. Usually what I
ideas.
do is I just hide like any technical stuff out of my way if I can with my dual. I don't think I could ever go back to a single monitor. I very much have improved with having two monitors for sure.
Hmm
Um, I don't know, but um,
Yep, something to try, I guess. I can find a way. And especially now I have an auto splitter, so I set up a bunch
mm,
of pictures, so I always have an auto splitter now for every game. So I don't even need to think about them at all if
that
I
is
don't
nice to
want
think
to.
about. Yeah,
I just have to start them
yeah,
and then I'm good. So I might give it a try. And then again, depends on the game because a lot of the games I run I need to know, so
yeah. Yeah, I
it's
think
just how it
another useful
works.
thing for me too for splitting is getting a foot pedal. That honestly made it a
Mm.
lot nicer for me as well. I
Yeah, I
literally
never
just
had one. I've always used
yeah.
spacebar, but now I don't need to worry about splitting at all, so even
I
better.
remember yeah, I remember whenever I got it, like the first person I thought of that had a foot pedal was Darbian. So I just like literally
Mm-hmm.
looked up like Darbian foot pedal and somebody like answered it on Reddit or something and I just bought the same one like, secondhand.
Nice.
Um so that's definitely been nice too. I feel like it's just nicer because like at least with my setup where I'm facing, I can like always have my foot like I'm just like here and my foot's just down here. I don't even have to think about moving anything. I just like move my foot down a little bit. I don't have to like go over here and
Mm-hmm.
figure it out. So um that's definitely little things like that are nice. Just like minimize how much I have to use my brain for other things.
Oh yeah,
um
I have not a lot of brain power, so I need to
Yeah,
focus as much of it as possible into what's important.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, just kind of very much just optimizing every little part of your
Hmm.
setup. Um,
Oh
yeah, I
yeah,
don't know.
setups are
um,
fun to deal with.
yeah.
So many wires and
Oh God,
digital
you do not want to
stuff, and
see.
oh,
Yeah, nope.
mm,
Um,
jungle down there.
yeah, I do not cable management in the slightest. I know a lot of people would absolutely kill me if they saw what if you flip the camera the other way and point it down. You would not. A lot of people would get angry at me.
Yeah,
Um,
I guess it's not. I don't have a ton of stuff. Well, over there, that's a never mind. But yeah, I really want to
yeah.
get a shelving unit where I can make it look all nice, but that costs
Mm,
money. So I don't have that.
yeah. Um, I don't know. I like I'm never like the 100% neatest person in terms of like my setups and stuff, but I just try to make it to the point where at least I know where everything is and I can get around to things if I need to. That's just kind of like my priority.
Hmm.
Um,
So that's
I don't
just
know.
against the wall, underneath everything. Who cares, right?
Yeah, yeah. I probably could tidy it a little bit, but I don't know. That's just not my priority.
Hmm.
Um, what's nice is that as long as people on my webcam can't see it, then I don't really care
Yeah,
100%.
exactly. Out of sight,
Um,
out of mind.
yeah, yeah.
You know
Just
what?
when like
Actually, my cables look great. They're so nice and organized. You'll never see them, but yeah, they're great.
uh, yeah, I'm totally not staring at like 3 or 4 random wires jagging out here right now. Ugh,
Mm-hmm. Nope. No
awesome.
way to know.
Yeah. Doesn't help that I've added more and more stuff to my setup. Like, I added the foot pedal. I had to like switch to a different like, bigger splitter when I like switched from like just composite to like I do like S video for Super Nintendo now. So I had to get a separate
Mm-hmm.
thing for that with like outputting it back to my TV. And then I'm trying to think also nowadays instead of a webcam, I use like an actual camera hooked up to like a little cam link device. So that's like a whole other separate thing. I have like a camera on a tripod sitting on my desk in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
Um the setup just keeps growing and growing and it feels like it never ends.
Yeah. I like
Um
conveniency, so I try to keep things simple. What's nice, like
yeah.
I have all my like the main three, the NES, and Nintendo 64 are all RGB modded. Well, the SNES doesn't need a mod, but they can all
Yeah.
use the same retrovision cable. So you just
Nice.
switch it and plug it in. Oh, it's so easy. I love it. And just nice, easy webcam. Yeah, I keep things very simple. So I guess my wire situation probably isn't that bad, honestly, compared to what I imagine other people's setups look like.
Yeah, mine's definitely kind of messy. I feel like I just put things where I need to. Like my NES is currently just randomly sitting on the floor in front of my computer. It's been sitting there since I last used it, and I just haven't figured out a place for it. And I don't really care because no one sees it.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
my basement's going through some remodeling, so it's a mess everywhere else. So I try to keep my little corner of the basement somewhat tidy.
yeah. I will say it is nice. Before I moved like a year ago, I had always just had my setup in my room. Like you'd only see like my bed behind me previously.
Mm-hmm.
And now I have like a little separate office room. It's really tiny. Like what you're staring at right now is like 80% of the room, 90% of the room. It's really
Mm-hmm.
tiny, but it is nice to have that separate space, like separated from where I'm doing other things. I feel like that's one thing that was kind of annoying before. Um,
Maybe.
I don't know. Yes and no. I kind of miss it in certain ways too, because it was a lot more convenient for sure. Like I could just
Mm-hmm.
like end stream and just go to bed.
Hmm.
But
There you go.
um,
Optimal.
yeah. I remember there was even one time like years ago where like I randomly just like took a break in the middle of stream. I just like took a nap and then came back up or whatever. Yeah. I don't know. There's pros and cons of different setups, but for me it is kind of nice to have this separate space just to be able to separate that stuff. Just have like one space where I know people aren't gonna bother me.
Yeah.
Um, I don't
I
know.
like speed running different and all the different setups people have because it can be like this complicated, cool looking mess, but you can also just I don't know, capture an emulator and then capture your splits, and that's all you need to. You can just do it all with one laptop. Very easy to get into.
Yeah.
You don't have to go into all the bullshit unless you go insane with it, like some people do.
Yeah. You really don't need that much. Like even like like a few years ago when I was in the middle of switching computers and I didn't have like a desktop for a week, I literally just took out like my old like kind of slow laptop. I opened up OBS, I plugged in like an older capture card that I knew would work, and that's all I really needed.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. So sometimes you really don't need that much if you just want to like simply, do what you need to do.
Yeah, I remember. Uh, I think it was New Year's Day 2018. Like I just got into speedrunning, and I was at a friend's house, and they weren't doing anything, and I was bored, and I brought my laptop, so I just pulled up my emulator. I started OBS, and I got a PB by one whole frame. But it, I was just, it was the laptop was on my lap, and I was just playing the game, so it can be as
Yeah,
simple as that.
yeah, it is really cool that you can really just do whatever. Like all the extra stuff is really just, extra, just kind of fleshing it out.
Mm-hmm.
That is nice that it's just kind of become like whatever. Um, there's definitely been certain points where you kind of, needed like very specific things or, like devices wouldn't work properly on different things. Like I remember capture cards, even like in 2015 when I started capture cards, like in compatibility on different things, it absolutely sucked. It was horrible. Um, in a lot of different ways. Nowadays, you can honestly get like any capture card you want, and it like usually just works in OBS, no issue. Um, I remember back, like I remember a lot of people used to use a program called Amarek, to
I
like
still
get.
use it.
Do you use it?
Yeah.
Okay, wow,
I found because direct capture in OBS drops frames, but Amarek doesn't for some reason. Specifically,
interesting,
if I capture like the window separately.
interesting.
So I
Yeah.
don't even use Amarek Live. I just capture the window from the
Huh.
program. But what's cool about that is I learned a way to separate the audio so the Amarek audio doesn't come through my laptop speakers, but OBS still captures it, so I don't hear it. And I gotta say, I love that.
Yeah. I I do stuff like that. Fortunately, OBS has become so fleshed out that I do stuff like that on OBS now as well. But yeah, it's interesting. Capture cards have always been this weird thing, like where it just like is very like like it's just like very much a computer by computer kind of thing. Like one setup will work, like one capture card will work fine on one like computer and one like OBS or whatever, but then on a different like version of OBS or like a different like it's just one little thing and like things absolutely break. It's just like I don't know. Capture cards are just like the one finicky thing that just like has never consistently worked for different people on different devices over the years. That I don't know. Um,
Hmm.
I feel like it's gotten better though. Generally, OBS is usually pretty good for a lot of. I mean, I know a lot of people that just like. I just remember like back when I started, like basically everyone used like Amarek or there are a couple other similar ones, but I do know a few other people that still do use Amarek and stuff like that. But I would say nowadays it's easier than ever for anyone to just like plug anything in and it like on average usually works. Where when I started it like never worked.
Yeah,
um,
things have definitely gotten better.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, I would say streaming like speedruns was not really 100%. Well, I mean, obviously, say in still certain cases it may not be the most ideal, but I would say over the last like 4 to 5 years, it's gotten pretty clean in comparison to how much of a Wild West experience it was like mid to early like 2010s. I would say.
Hmm. Yeah, I can't imagine how messed up it was. I remember when I first tried using Amarek, it was a pain in the ass to get it figured out, but once it's all set up and good, it's working for me pretty well. I just had to get like very specific drivers for my capture card and all that fun stuff, but I
Yeah,
have the StarTech, so it I can do composite component, S video, HDMI, and again, I love conveniency, so it's an
yeah,
all-in-one. So that's why I
that's what
use
I
it.
have as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's the best purchase I've ever made. I think I got mine like what probably like 5 years ago at this point, and it's
Mm,
still running strong. Um,
yeah. When did I get
yeah.
mine? Because I started with a Dazzle
Mm.
because Cosmic gave me his old one at a GDQ if I promised to never play an emulator again. So well, yeah, I didn't, but God, that capture looks so bad if I look at some of my old runs.
Oh God, some of
Like
mine
I think
suck
I got my
too.
first
Yeah.
warpless record on it, and I just am like, ugh, it's so bad. Because now
uh,
everything's RGB modded, and I use proper capture cards, and I have it all set up. Use filters to make it try to look as good as possible, but back then it was just this grainy bullshit.
yeah, I definitely went through a few random capture cards before I settled on the StarTech for quite a while. I remember my first one I had like an old Elgato capture card. I hear that Elgato capture cards are pretty decent today, but
Mm-hmm.
I know the old ones back then absolutely sucked. The common issue with it is they would have like 2 or 3 seconds of built-in delay.
That's a lot.
Yeah, yeah. So you would split, but you wouldn't actually see it until like 3 seconds later. It was it was just frustrating for speedrun streams. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I definitely has gotten a lot better today. And then I remember in between I went with like a couple random ones. Like I think I had like some random like Avermedia gamer, one of those random whatever the hell.
Mm-hmm.
And then yeah, definitely the StarTech is. I forget who I saw that had it, but I feel like everyone I've known that has had one, I know a few people who do. They've held up pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mine's
I
still
think the only
good,
thing,
so I'm happy with
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah, it is nice. I've literally used I've used HDMI, composite, component, and S video. It's just nice to be able to do all that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah. If this thing ever goes out, which it doesn't look like it will, but if it does, I'll just buy it again because it does everything I need it to. Looks good.
yeah,
I don't need anything
yeah,
else.
yeah, for sure. That's probably the one investment in my stream setup that's just been like consistent and very. I don't regret it a slight bit at all. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
As long as it
yeah,
does component in HDMI, that's all you really need. Those are like the two big ones. Well, at least for
yep,
me, as
yeah,
someone who cares about component now, I guess.
yeah. I mostly use like S video and component. Yeah,
Hmm. Yeah, S
yep.
video is pretty good. It's just for some games it gives this whole pattern that
Mm.
kind of annoys me. I
Yeah,
tried. I
yeah,
for some reason got really suckered into quality of both video and audio, but mostly video.
gotcha.
So because audio
Y-
generally sounds pretty good.
Yeah, on my I know exactly that video thing you're thinking of. I'm pretty sure my game feed for SNES, at least on Mario World, it does actually mine does do that a little bit, but
Hmm.
I don't mind it because it's a major upgrade versus composite. I'd much
Oh
rather use
yeah,
the S video. It's
yeah.
day and night.
The difference between composite and S video
It's crazy.
compared to S video and component, it's so much bigger from composite
Yeah,
S video, like
yeah.
enormous.
It's not even close. I remember the first day I switched to it, it felt like a miracle happened. Like it was
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, I played in
Um,
composite for so long. I picked up this CRT from like Craigslist and it had component. And I remember like plugging in my RGB things for the first time and I was just like, holy shit. I I could see the pixels individually. This is
yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
And now I'll
Unfortunately,
never
the
go back.
CRT, yeah. Yeah, I don't think I could ever go back either. Well, at least on my capture card. And unfortunately, on my CRT, it only does composite. So what I have to do is I have a converter box where I just plug the S video in, and then the S
Hmm.
one goes S video to capture card, and then I have to unfortunately downgrade it to my CRT.
Oh,
Um,
well,
but yeah, it's not that bad anyways because I play on a really small CRT, so it really doesn't make a difference for me personally.
mine's
Um,
27 inches, so
yeah, mine's 9, so
okay, so slight difference.
just a little bit. Yeah, I did play when I first started. I did play on a 27 inch, and I can tell you going from a 27 to a 9 inch was quite a dramatic difference. It got a lot of
Really?
yeah, a lot
It's
of adjustment.
it's literally a third of the size.
Yeah, yeah, it's because I years back like we moved and there was no way I was lugging that thing. Like no none of us were gonna lug that around.
No, yeah.
So yeah, so I was just like, let me get something small that like fits on my desk or whatever. Um, with my current setup, it's not even on my desk. I have a setup where my computer's on the floor, and then there's like a milk crate on top of it,
Hmm.
and then the CRT sits on top of the milk crate. It's weird, but it works, and it like oddly looks kind of good. Because what I do in the milk crate is I just put like my consoles in there, like my SNES is just sitting there. Um,
As long as it works,
yeah,
it's all
and
that
I can just like
matters.
route all my wires through all the holes. It's actually like more perfect than you would think for a little DIY setup. So I'm not complaining.
Yep.
Yeah. The only thing that sucks is like getting back there with the wires and like if I want to like clean it or stuff, because like it's like in the corner of my room and the wires like if I want to get to like any of my back USBs, I like have to crawl down there. It kind of sucks, but whatever.
Yeah, yeah. So, I know we talked a ton about Mario World, but you actually like ran a bunch of stuff, just random shit too.
Yeah. Um. God, I don't even know where to start. I mean, after you speedrun stuff for so many years, you kind of, I mean, at least I've ended on like going down these like weird rabbit holes over the years. Um, Debatably the biggest one, most notable one by far is Eminem's kart racing on the Wii.
The best racing game ever made.
Yeah, better than Mario Kart Wii, best Wii racing game for sure.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
Actually predates it by like half a year, I think, or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, you would think it's even older than that because it does not look. It looks older than that, but um, yeah, I forget. So with me starting to collect like me getting like some retro consoles for speedrunning, it kind of turned me into like a game collector in general. So I started collecting a bunch of Wii games because like the Wii is like the one console I've like a huge attachment to because it was the first console I got growing up. Like I could have I very much could have gotten into GameCube and stuff, but I just like stuck to the desktop computer for quite a while. I just play like Flash games and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until the Wii where I actually I had a console, and I don't know. No matter what, I think the Wii will always be like my favorite console, just because I just have like that bias with how much time I spent with it. Um, and once I started getting some physical, like more physical games after I first got like some SNES games and stuff, I went back to the Wii, and I was like, oh, like the Wii has like one of the biggest game libraries for like any console ever. It may have like debatably the biggest. Like it has like I know just in North America there's like 1,200 games. Um, and if you go to like other regions, you add like a few hundred more or something like that. It's a ridiculous library.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and unfortunately, a lot of it is quite bad.
Most of
Nint-
like 99% of it's shovelware. Let's just be honest.
yeah, yeah. I will admit there are a handful of hidden gems that I would have never
Mm-hmm.
found out about if I didn't collect them. But I do have to admit, yeah, there's a lot of junk on there.
Mm-hmm.
I think at this point I have like 240 something Wii games at this
Wow.
point. And I would say out of that, like definitely less than 50 are like games I'm gonna actually play. That's for sure. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but I remember, I think I first saw like one or two people on YouTube playing MM's kart racing. I just saw how bad it was, and I was just like, oh, let me just go to like, back when GameStop was still selling, that like that weird in between where like Wii wasn't the main console, but the GameStop was still selling some of them. I went there and I found a copy for like $4 or $5, and I was like, okay,
Hmm.
let's pop it in. I uh I just did like a casual like no reset run of it, and honestly that's history. I think I first did it back in like 2016,
Hmm.
and for the first like couple of years it was basically just me playing it. But then I submitted it to speedrun.com and everything, and then out of nowhere like a couple other people just like noticed it and started playing it, and I actually had competition, and I actually had to like I had to get back my record, and the main category is like tournament mode. It's basically the equivalent of like Grand Prix, like you play through all the tracks. Um, so that was like the main category, the main speed run. Um, but for the first handful of years, it was just like me, and then a couple other people came later. But it wasn't really until 2019 when I came back and I was like, oh, I should establish a time trial leaderboard for this game. So I thought that'd be interesting, try to optimize like some times because like this one main category, no one was touching it. It was kind of like dead.
Hmm.
And I just like randomly one day was like, oh, I don't know why, but I want to play this game again. So I decided to. Um, and for the first like month or two, it was just me beating my own times. But then I was actually like so bored, I like wanted competition. So I actually asked Friggin' Fricks 14. He mostly does like Animal Crossing and Monkey Ball. I've known him for a while. I literally like asked him, I was like, hey, if I like buy you like he was like, oh, you want to like run this game? And he's like, I don't know, I don't have a copy of it. And I was like, if I buy you a copy of the game, will you run it? And he was like, sure. So I literally I literally like bought him a copy on eBay. I just like shipped it, like put it to his address, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I basically spawned my own competition. And he started actually beating my times. And since then, we've actually developed like it's kind of weird in such a like a weird racing game that we've actually developed like actual tech and strategies and stuff like that. Like since then, we've discovered a handful of like skips, like kind of ultra shortcuts, I guess you could call them, and also just like different techniques. It's a really broken and unpolished game.
Hmm.
If you couldn't tell by just it being Eminem's kart racing, it's just not a game it's definitely not Mario Kart, that's for sure. Even though Mario Kart's broken too, but that's another whatever. Anyways, uh, I don't know. We've just developed all this tech over the years. Like for example, like going up slopes, like you lose a lot of speed. So if you like, the thing about Eminem's kart racing that's interesting is it's fully motion controlled. So you hold the Wii remote and you have to, whatever, do that. There's no other option. At least with like Mario Kart, you can like plug in a controller or whatever. But with this, you have to do motion controls, and it's very very shoddy. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm trying to think. Like going up hills, like you randomly lose like half your speed. But we found that if you like shake the Wii remote and like snake back and forth almost in different places, you can like preserve speed and stuff like that. It's really weird. And then I think the thing that like really got this game going even more is I remember in 2020, I I made a video on I just like randomly was like there it was at a point where there was enough history about the game where I made a giant like world record history about the game. I talked about the tournament mode run and also some of the like individual record runs. It ended up coming out to like I think it was like about an hour or something like that. It was ridiculous. Um and I remember after that that actually caused Jeremy MKW, uh who probably most people, if they know him from anything, he's gotten some pretty good times in Mario 1. He's had the Warp List record before. He decided to get a copy of the game. And for anyone who doesn't know Jeremy, like he can just pick up something and like kill it. Like he can just get like really good really quickly. Like it's honestly crazy. I still can't believe how good he gets at things really quickly. He can just like sit down and learn a speed run within like a couple hours. Like he'll just sit down and like grind whatever he needs to. Um, and he like not that long after basically got every single world record in the game. And ever since then, it's been a kind of a quest for me and Fricks to try to like minimize how many records he has. um, at this point, he has I think every record besides like I think there's like two or three that we were able to tie, but most of the records Jeremy has untied. He kind of like almost killed the game. But what's interesting is that the game, even for a silly speed game, like for what you think is a joke speed game, it's actually had a lot of life over the years. I feel like every like few months we'll come back and play the game for a day or two, and we'll find like a new slight strategy on a track, and we'll save like a frame on the time trial or whatever. Which has been really interesting. We've had like a few different like battles and kind of like back and forths over the past few years. Um, I think the most notable track is the stadium, which is literally just like a loop circle track. So basically, the world record strat is just kind of like taking the corners as often as possible and just staying kind of as far in without losing time. Uh, for a while it was like I think it was like a 5 or 6 way tie between like me, Jeremy, Fricks, and like a few other people that just randomly saw the speed run and picked it up. Um, and then I remember I put out like a $100 bounty. I just like made like a short video. I'm like, hey, I'll give you $100 if you can beat this, because like nobody had beat it for like a year and a half or something. It just kept getting tied. Um, and it almost became the equivalent of like almost like dragster, for anyone familiar with that,
Hmm.
where it's a really short run. You're just trying to get like can a frame be saved? Can not, it just got to the point where it's like there's like no more time to squeeze from it. Um, I think finally within like on the same exact day, three people were able to save like a frame, and I gave like $100 to like whoever got. I forget who got it first. I can't think right now.
Hmm.
Um, but it's kind of interesting that a joke speedrun like that can have something so serious, which is just kind of I don't know. That's been the fun thing with just speedrunning in general. It's just kind of like having fun with something that otherwise doesn't seem like something you would enjoy. Um,
Yeah.
like I don't know. Like kind of one of my other like notable big things I've done with different speed games is I had a little tangent where I went into like speedrunning like Dora games on the Game Boy Advance, Dora the Explorer, and I had a couple records across those games. Um, and that ended up being another thing where I kind of went back and forth with like a couple people, and we found like we kind of just like kept killing a run that otherwise we spawn competition out of something that otherwise probably shouldn't have competition. But I feel like that's just kind of the fun thing in speedrunning is that you can kind of it doesn't always have to be serious. You don't have to be like getting like a top 10 time in like a notable Mario game. It doesn't have to always be like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I do that stuff as well, but it's just like it's nice to be able to. I usually use a lot of these joke runs as like breaks in between serious runs. Like over the years, I've consistently run Mario World, but if I like need a break for a month or two, I'll just run one of these joke games instead, and just you know, I'll just be like, okay, I need a little break. Let me just play, play Eminem's kart racing for like a couple of weeks and just see if I can like improve my times. Um, and what's funny is, I mean, specifically with Eminem's kart racing, is that I've kind of like spawned a whole community out of it. Like, there's an entire Discord server for it now.
Hmm.
I use it more than my actual server a lot of times nowadays, which is funny. Um, I don't know. It's just been interesting. Like I never really thought that like I would spend so much time playing like a random racing game that based on M&Ms that no one cares about. Um, but
Hey, shitty games make for great speedruns.
they really do. It's honestly been really cool to see how many people have like messed with it. Like I made like that speedrun history video, and people have been interested since. I've had like people. I think that video is like a couple of years old now, so people have been constantly asking me for like an updated history or whatever. So it's funny to see that there's actually such an interest in that. And even like a month ago, I did like a run of it for GDQ Hotfix. They were interested enough in me showing that, which was cool. So like 1,000 people got to see me play M&M's kart racing, which is kind of funny.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think that's the most amount of people that have watched that game at once, which is very exciting. Um, but
Probably.
yeah,
Most
uh,
people that have seen that game at all, maybe.
yeah, probably for sure. Um, but I don't know. It's just been a fun thing over the years. I just find like different speedruns. It's nice to be able to use those games as a break for something. You grind one game for so many months and years, and it's like maybe you still want to play it, but you just need something in between to break it up. It gets monotonous after a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I
Burnout's
don't know.
really easy, so.
Yeah, yeah. There's definitely been some periods where I've been able to grind for like multiple months, like just Mario World. But I would say nowadays, for the most part, like I feel like I can only seriously grind for maybe like a week or two at a time. Like, I mean, it depends
Mm-hmm.
on how much time I have. But like another thing I used to do to take breaks is I would still play Mario World, but a huge phase I had is I would speedrun Mario World ROM hacks, which to this day is still a pretty flourishing community. It's a bit different nowadays with like Kaizo stuff, but it's still kind of a similar. At its core, it's a similar thing where you have separate speedrun leaderboards for all these. Like Mario World ROM hacking it's debatably like what I would debate Mario World is one of the like it debatably may have like the most like ROM hacks out of like any game. It's got to be in the top 5 easily. Um, there's an entire community. I mean, there's an entire website dedicated to SMW Central where they like publish and test out hacks and stuff like that. Um, and that became a huge thing for me because if I still want to play Mario World, but I just wanted to like do something a little differently that wasn't like a category that I'd been playing for 5 days straight, then I could just do that instead. Um, some of them were very underwhelming. I would get a world record in a hack and nobody else would run it, so I didn't really feel that special. But there were definitely a few hacks that had a lot of competition. I remember going back and forth with a couple different people in some different runs. And I remember back then I even like showcased a few of them at like little like online speedrun marathons, whatever. But that's kind of cool that to see like individual communities stem off of an actual game. Like it's still the actual game, but it's also not at the same time. Um, it's just kind of cool to be able to do that, like get more life out of a game that like Mario World already has like so much going for it in different categories, but it's cool that on top of that there's a whole other subset that like nowadays like the ROM hack community in a lot of ways is debatably bigger than the actual vanilla community. It's a lot bigger. At least on the speedrun side, it's not even close. Kaizo is like huge now.
Yeah.
Um, which I mean, I have my things about that. I'm personally not a Kaizo person. Like, I don't. It's not my thing. I don't hate it. Like, I'm not just gonna be like, ugh, but that's just not my style. I don't enjoy playing Kaizo. But
Mm-hmm.
um, it is cool in certain ways. Like, it is cool to see that popularity. Like, even if people aren't caring about the original game, which I feel like a lot of them probably aren't. They probably just see, oh, cool, cool Kaizo tricks, whatever. But uh, it is cool to at least see that the game Mario World has lived on in different ways. But I definitely do kind of miss back in like I used to do a lot of ROM hacks mostly back between like 2016 and like 2018, I would say, where I would kind of go back and forth. There's a couple of specific people that I used to kind of go back and forth with in different hacks. We kind of just like pop the different hacks and just kind of see who could beat whatever. Or I would see a really old time on one of the boards that was be sitting there for like a year or two, and I'd just be like, "Oh, let's just beat this really quick because I know I can." Um, I definitely do miss some of that. I mean, there definitely is some of that with nowadays, like with Kaizo leaderboards, but I don't really tap into all of that. I only tap into some of that because I'm like one of the people who like creates and moderates some of those boards because like I was the one who got into those early on, so they just like handed me that role, but I don't really stay in tune with all that. Um, necessarily. Kaizo has almost become like just its own like brand entirely. I remember I remember around the same time, like, like 2016, whatever. In a lot of ways, Kaizo was just like lumped in with vanilla in different ways. I remember the handful of people that used to. I remember like the only hacks that people really ran originally were like the first Kaizo hacks. Like there was like Kaizo like 1 and I think, and not as much, but some people would try to run like the other. There was like a Kaizo 2 and 3 that was made by the same creator. Um, and I remember that pretty much just consisted of like people who had speedrun the vanilla game. Uh, but it's just taken on like an entirely different meaning at this point. It's just like a lot. I bet there's a lot of Kaizo players and runners that have never even beaten the original game. I would go as far as say I would not be shocked if that's the case. Which is kind of weird to say.
Hmm.
Um,
Maybe.
but um, I would argue that just because of how casual Kaizo has become, like it has a huge following on different places. Like I know for a fact, like Kaizo is oddly huge on like on YouTube Shorts and like TikTok, like short form content. It's like a huge niche on there. It's just like for example, I know shout out to specifically Zero Maverick who on TikTok, like he was a vanilla Mario World speedrunner, like around the same time as me when I first started. But over the last like couple of years, he's made a killing just off of doing like Kaizo stuff on TikTok. He'll like stream on TikTok like Kaizo stuff, and he has like 2,000 people watching him. Like it's
Mm.
crazy. Like I never really thought that TikTok would be the thing where people would want to play Kaizo. But it's kind of interesting. I don't know. TikTok is weird with speedrunning in general. I feel like it's a whole other topic, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just weird how I guess it's kind of just almost part of like speedrunning becoming more globalized and like casual, just casual people. Um, I don't know. It's weird. I do kind of miss some of the old like communities in different ways. I miss when people would just play like this silly ROM hack that whatever, and people didn't really care about stuff. I feel like now people just care about, oh, cool, he did like 5 shell dumps back to back, and those things are cool. Um, I don't hate on any of that stuff, but just like for me personally, I just kind of get like it's not my thing to play. I don't have the patience for that. But on top of just watching it, I personally get bored of watching that stuff after a little bit. That's just me. I don't hate it. There's a lot of cool people that I'm friends with in this community. Like shout out to them, but that's just like not my speed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know, but it's just cool that like being able to speedrun so many different things that like aren't your main speed game, but kind of are as well. There's an entire like subcategory on speedrun.com of just like Super Mario World ROM hacks, whatever. There's an entire like subset there. There's like probably a few hundred hacks on there that you can run like with different leaderboards.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I don't know. Just kind of going back to other games that I ran though. I mean, ROM hacks were definitely big by far, but just completely different games. I mean, yeah, there was M&Ms, there was Dora. I mean, if you go on my Speedrun.com page, there's been certain times in Speedrun.com's history where the site just like isn't like there's been times where Speedrun.com does not load pages that well, and my Speedrun.com page has so many different games and runs that sometimes my profile will just crash if you try to load it, because it has
Well.
that many games on it. Um, I haven't had that issue in quite a while, but I remember a few years ago when Speedrun.com had a lot of those issues. Like
Mm-hmm.
my page, like 75% of the time, my profiles wouldn't load because I had that many things on it. Um, I've played a lot of games like one or two times. I've had different periods where I'm like, I'm just a fan of like messing with really bad games. If you couldn't tell with Eminem's car racing, because if you've never seen Eminem's car racing, go watch a minute of it. You can tell it's not
Oh, it's
something of
bad.
yeah
It's
yeah
real bad.
yeah. It's a it's I'm kind of shocked at how much fun I've been able to get out of the game. I feel like the only reason why I have fun with it is because I have other people to mess with in there. Um, that's kind of why I gave myself my own competition. Because I think if I didn't do that, then I wouldn't have been able to talk about the rest of the history of it. Like it just wouldn't have existed. Um, but it's kind of cool that you can do things like that. I've spent hours upon hours upon hours on this random game just because I have fun with it with other people. I mean, it's kind of just the beauty of speedrunning is making fun out of things that otherwise would be really boring and dumb. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I've I've done that with a handful. I'm trying to think of another really good example. Like I've definitely had some like other one-offs. Like I know for like a couple days I did like Thomas the Tank Engine on the Super Nintendo. I remember that like that no like that leaderboard was dead and the only moderator was like inactive, so I just became the moderator for that board randomly. Like I'm a moderator of a few random speedrun boards just because I was there at the right time. And I just started randomly running something like I'm randomly a leaderboard mod for like Mario Party 10 for some reason just because I ran that a few times when it first came out.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. There's a huge chance that I've ran something that like you otherwise would think I didn't. There was a point where I was running a bunch of different games because speedrun.com used to have before it was like bought out in the last few years. There was a separate like section with like more detailed information. Like you could like see like a user's list of like where people were located, like how many categories they played. But the one that I focused on the most was how many games people had ran. There was like a leaderboard for like most amount of games people had speedrun across the entire site. I remember at my peak I was in like the top like 25, 30 or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, and I remember that was a huge reason why I actually ran a bunch of random games for a bit. There, like I think it was like 2018 or something. You can see that I ran like a ton of games within a span of like a few months or something. Um, and I was just like trying to like diversify my page and just kind of like it was a fun little game just to like see what I could do with different things. Um, but yeah, sadly a lot of that kind of stuff has died out. Due to those features being removed. Uh, but I don't know. There still are some people that still do that. I know there's specifically a like Discord like speedrun. They're called like Farmington, where they try to like farm different like speedrun.com strat or statistics, where they like try to run as many games as possible and all that. But it's honestly not the same. It was kind of cool when there was like an official leaderboard on the page.
Hmm.
Um,
I remember seeing it.
yeah, yeah. I feel
Some of those
like
numbers blew my mind. I was like, how?
yeah. Um, there were a few names at the top there, the most run games that were like nowhere close to like fourth, fifth, and sixth place. Like there was just like
Hmm.
that huge gap, and I was like, how did you do that? Uh, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like that side of speedrunning is very iffy. I feel like certain speedrunners probably hate that idea. Like people are like, oh, you should actually run the games more seriously, and you got to grind it and get into the community and all that. But
Hmm.
I don't
No,
know.
I mean
I don't know.
you do it however you want. And
Yeah,
that's how speedrunning works. No one should care how you do it.
yeah. Yeah, that's not how I feel at all. It's just that I've seen people like whine about that, where it's like, oh, you shouldn't just like run a random game and then run something at like you just like
Oh,
who
whatever.
cares?
Who
Like who
cares?
cares? I don't care.
Exactly.
Yeah. um, I don't know. That's just been my thing over the years. Is like I just like enjoy doing random things. I mean, I did just Mario World for quite a while, and then it went to me doing random category extensions, and then I was just like, I got to do some other things. I gotta have some fun. I gotta do more in life. Um,
Hmm.
so But I feel like there's just kind of like a beauty of speedrunning too. It's just doing random things. Like not everything has to be serious. Like sure, there's a lot of things in like people try to make speedrunning really serious in different regards, and there are like some very serious records that are like very like should be celebrated and stuff. But that's not what speedrunning should be as a whole. Like it
Hmm.
should just very much be just like whatever, just have fun. Um,
Yep.
like yeah, like let's celebrate all the prestigious records, but that doesn't mean that that's not what speedrunning completely is. That's like not that shouldn't be the only thing.
No, yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I've always liked to tread like an in between of like being kind of serious and also just kind of having fun. Um, I definitely have grinded a lot of Mario World runs semi seriously, but it definitely is nice to take a break and just do other completely random things in between, whether it's Mario related or not. Um, I don't know. That's just like it's really nice to have like category extensions on speedrun.com and stuff like that. I was really happy when they started adding those kinds of boards. It really brought a whole new life to people that like otherwise probably wouldn't have ever submitted a time to anything. Um, there definitely are like certain categories and awards where it's like, like people just kind of spam it, but like whatever. I think there's more of a benefit to those boards than not. Uh, so I think it's cool. There's a lot of people I know that they started like their first ever speed run was just like some joke like Mario extension category, and then they end up running the actual game after that, and they probably wouldn't have otherwise. So
Hmm.
I think it's more beneficial to just allow people just do whatever, just do as throw whatever you want out there. I mean, leaderboards at their core are just like a social construct. Really, it's just like what we agree on, whatever.
Hmm.
So it just kind of ties into what we were talking about earlier. Just do whatever you want. Um,
Speedrun whatever you want, whatever the hell you want, but don't no cheating though. Just don't cheat.
yeah,
And unless
yeah,
you don't plan to submit it or anything because they will find you.
Yeah, that's been an interesting topic over the years. Just like all these different stories of like after all these years, people find that the specific runner was cheating or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Luckily, like personally, I haven't had to deal with that in terms of like someone I know or like close to me or whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
I've definitely seen some stories where I'm like really shocked. Like I don't know, like I don't want to throw any names, but there's definitely like like there was one person that was like I remember there was one person like specific Mario Kart game that like they eventually found out they cheated runs because I don't know how they didn't find this out earlier, but they literally sped up their footage just very slightly.
Mm.
Um, it was just like very whatever. Um, I think they realized that when they switched to like they originally just used like RTA, but then they switched to like in-game time because of like load times because this was Mario Kart Wii. So Wii load times are very different on different consoles.
Yeah.
And when they started switching to in-game time, they're like, oh, this does not match. I don't know if that's when that happened, but I'm just gonna assume that it would have been found if it wasn't already at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, it makes sense.
yeah, but yeah, eventually that's just how speedrunning is. Eventually, like either someone's gonna have some extra free time, or the community is gonna change, like some strategy is gonna change or something, and it's just like speedrunning is just rapidly evolving so much that there's gonna be eventually one reason that somebody's gonna view your old run and just like see that it's not what it is if you did cheat.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know. I honestly don't understand. I mean, I guess I kind of like get why people want, they just want to get times and stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
from my perspective, I've just never, I don't know, I've never seen the satisfaction of the, like, I've never even like contemplated. I don't think about that stuff at all. It's just like whatever. I don't see the fun in that. Um, I don't know. Like, who cares if you
Yeah.
have like the best time or if you get this, whatever. Like, I'm just trying to have fun and socialize with people and whatever, and just see what I can do. Um, I don't care. Um, well, I
Excuse
guess I
me.
have personally. I mean, I started moderating Super Mario World speedruns, like the leaderboard, like back in 2020, and I guess on that case, I have personally dealt with a lot of cheaters. I guess I didn't think about it that way. I have rejected a bunch of cheated runs.
Mm-hmm.
Um, with it being one of the more like notable games on speedrun.com, there's all it takes is just like one like 12-year-old that just like opens up whatever, just opens up like a task editor and just tries to play something off. Um,
Oh,
I've
I've rejected plenty of fun stuff. Actually, in the SME1 mod Discord, I made it so we have a channel where we post just humorous rejections. Because hey, if you're gonna waste our time, we're gonna waste yours with some dumbass message in the rejection.
yeah, I've definitely had fun with things like that over the years for sure. Um, Yeah, it's just I don't know. What's funny is that like a lot of these like times it gets submitted, it's like I don't even get why you cheated that because like there's some where it's like anybody could have literally done that if you just like put in just the slightest bit of time.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know. I can like maybe understand if someone like takes a bit of time to like I don't know. I feel like no matter what, like the amount of time you could spend cheating like doesn't make sense. You might as well just put in actual time, like no matter what. Like, I don't know.
I
It's just
wonder
I've
what
never
my
understood
uh Rickroll rejection number's at now. It's probably like 7.
that. Yeah,
So,
I've seen some of those too. Um, or somebody will just like submit like a random some other random video or a random image. Like
mm,
there's been a couple times where somebody's just straight up submitted like a not safe for work image, and I'm like, why?
no.
Like I don't.
Well, thank
I,
God I haven't seen that yet.
yeah, yeah, nope,
Yikes.
nope, yeah. I don't even. I can't even
Usually if it's
describe
not
it.
a link to like a Twitch video or a video, like it'll just show like the link where the video should be. I don't click on it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I remember one of them was like one of those like it was a YouTube video, but it was one of those ones where it's like it's not something you want to watch, but it's probably on there for like a technicality, like it's educational or whatever, like one of those kind
I
of
see.
like yeah, yeah. I don't
Yeah.
yeah.
Usually it's
After
pretty obvious just before the video plays, given the title and thumbnail if it's
yeah,
garbage or not.
yeah. Or like most of the time, a lot of the time they'll just submit like some random time that doesn't make sense or whatever.
Mhm.
Like
And I
like
see
I'll,
plenty of just stealing someone else's run. It's always so easy to tell.
yeah. Yeah, I think I maybe dealt with that once, maybe, but yeah, I that's probably the one that makes the least sense. 'Cause it's like you're submitting it to a community where somebody's statistically probably gonna know that. Like, there's gonna be at least one person in that community that's gonna know that it's that other person's run. Like, why are you doing that?
Hmm.
Um,
It's funny, like, oh,
yeah,
they'll never know, but I remember this one person submitted this person's run, And I was like, so I look through and I find the exact one it is, and then I say in the comment like, "You're not this person." Then they submit another one, someone else's. So I said, "You're not this person either." And I think they gave up. They're like, "Ah, shit, they know what they're doing."
Yeah, it's I don't know. Yeah, I agree with what Mally said. I have actually seen that issue quite a bit with just stealing stuff in general on like TikTok and YouTube Shorts. Like I've seen people just
Mm.
like take clips of someone's speedrun and just be like, "Oh, look at this cool trick or whatever." And it's like not even them.
Yeah, I've never been on TikTok, so I don't know what that
Yeah.
whole thing's like.
I don't use it that much. I've only used it a few times just to like experiment and like see if I can like make something pop off on there, but some of the times I have like gone on some of those things, like people will just like they'll just like take part of a task and just be like, "Oh, look at this amazing player beats whatever." It's just like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's the same kind of stuff you saw on YouTube like a few years back when a couple of those like notable people that would just like show a task and it was just like their webcam up there, whatever. It's the same kind of deal. It's just recycled content.
Yep.
Um, yeah, just
History repeats itself.
yeah. There's always going to be at least somebody trying to recycle content cheaply. Doesn't matter what it is. Um, that's just kind of human nature. People are going to exploit whatever is going to get clicks.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I
Yeah,
definitely
it's
feel
interesting.
yeah, feel the worst for Tool Sisters because like they'll work on these things for like so long, and then somebody will just like post a random like clip on Twitter or whatever, or like TikTok, whatever, and they'll get like millions of views, and nobody will ever know like the work that went behind that or the actual person or anything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I definitely feel bad. I've definitely like seen I've spoken to some taskers about some stuff like that. Um, I definitely like, especially with my videos, I've made like a huge emphasis to credit any little thing like that, even if I just use it for like a second, like
Mm-hmm.
because it's just like that stuff gets ripped off more than it ever should. Um, like I remember like Happy Lee, who like has made some of the most notable Super Mario Bros. Tasks, have made comments about that in like different comment sections. I think he even did on like one of my older videos where like I'll admit like when I first started making the speedrun videos, I didn't really make an effort to credit every single thing. I definitely have now, but
Mm-hmm.
getting comments like that, I've definitely like yeah, I don't I do feel bad. Um, but it's
Yeah.
just human nature. People are gonna do that.
So, what got you into becoming YouTube content person?
That's an interesting journey. I mean, I I had my first YouTube channel before I even should have had one. I think I made it when I was like 10 or 11.
Band.
Something like that. Yeah.
Fine.
Storster was not made that early on, so it's okay. Uh,
Okay, good.
but I've had a couple different YouTube channels since. But but yeah, it literally just started with me like Windows Movie Maker, like whatever, like straight up on like Windows XP, whatever. I was just like, you know, those like text slides and all those fun things. Or I used to have like like one of those really bad like budget like netbook laptops that had like a little cheap webcam on it, and I would just like point at my TV, whatever, and just
Mm-hmm.
and I thought that was good enough content. Um, like I think my first ever video back in like 2011 was just me like it was just pointing at the TV, just showing like one of the Wii channels, like the Check Me Out channel or something like that. Um, and I guess since then it's been history. I mean, for quite a while it was literally just me doing stuff like that, just like pointing my camera at the TV, doing like different game stuff. Um, but then I don't think I seriously like tried content in any shape, way, or form until like I mean mid 2010s. I had like my Minecraft phase, so I tried doing the generic Let's Play stuff. That stuff obviously didn't get anywhere. Uh, after that, I literally just like had nothing better to do, and I made like cheap meme content. Like people like like I specifically rode the wave of like those lazy town memes a few years, but like handful of years back, where like one of the actors was like they were trying to like raise money for him, whatever, because he was like dying or whatever.
Mm.
Um, and I like made a lot of memes based on that, and that actually had shocking success. I actually like before YouTube used to allow you to monetize basically anything. uh, I remember I made a few bucks off some of those videos, but like meme content is very like that's not sustainable. Like that you should not try to make a career off meme content. Um, so that stuff fizzled out after like a couple of years. I made whatever I could with that, and then I skedaddled. Um, but I don't think it wasn't until like 2018, 2019 where I like really did what like I kind of do today, where I like by that time I had like an actual setup with a microphone, webcam, and all that, and like I actually tried making like like scripted stuff. I remember at least when I first started doing specifically more gaming focused content, like scripted gaming content. One of my early, I mean, some of my earliest inspirations was stuff like like the angry video game nerd who would just review different games and like rant about stuff and all that. Um, I definitely did try to just kind of rip off some of that stuff for a bit, and a lot of those videos are very much private. I'm not gonna unlist those anytime soon. Um, but and then after that, I don't know. I just kind of did that for quite a while. I just do like random like pseudo gaming. Like I forget what I even did, but I would just like I do the mixture of just like random like highlight videos and just like me talking in front of a camera and all that. But it wasn't until the pandemic in mid 2020 where I was like, I kind of like want to actually like do something completely different. And I just kind of sat there for a while. I'm like, well, what can I make that like actually like interests me instead of like trying to like. 'Cause I feel like for a while I just try to chase different waves and like what was like maybe gonna go off. Uh, and I just kind of thought, well, I've been speedrunning for like at that point I had already been speedrunning for like 4 or 5 years, and I was like, oh, well, I mean, sure, I should just do that. I mean, at that time, Summoning Salt was already more than established and all that, so like there very much was already a platform on there. Like clearly people cared about that. Um, I remember the same week I first like wanted to actually start working on that stuff. Nifsky had happened to get his first world record in any percent in Super Mario Bros. I was like, oh, perfect. Let me just make a video on that. I thought that was interesting. So I immediately like started scripting something on that. And I remember I don't even know at that point if I must have, I probably like reached out to him on Discord or whatever, like whatever. And I made like a really quick, cheap, like 6, 7 minute video just on like the new record or whatever. It was just like, I think it was literally called like, is this Super Mario Bros. Record icon? Just like something to get your attention, whatever. Um, I almost just kind of tried to frame it after like Bismuth, just kind of like reviewing the run. Um, and shockingly, that popped off like for it being my first speedrun video, that popped off quickly. Because I mean, the thing about speedrunning is if you make a video about a specific game, even if it like doesn't go into the mainstream, if you make a good enough video, the specific community that it's about will usually enjoy it. Like they'll you'll get attention just from that one little community, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I mean, Super Mario Bros. Is one of the biggest speedrun communities, ever really throughout the entire history of speedrunning. So the fact that that community liked it, I remember it got a handful of views. I remember like immediately it went into like 5-digit views, and I'm like, whoa, like this is like something I can like actually do. I think that's the first time. That's the first time I had success with a video that like I actually put effort into. Like I had a few videos in the past that got like some different amount of views like on different channels, but they were all like really stupid memes that were just like moment of the time. Like if I uploaded it now, it wouldn't get views.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but this was like my first actual piece of content where I was like, oh, like I can make like actual videos and people like that people will actually enjoy. And I remember I kept riding that trend for a little bit, like similar kind of thing where I remember like that was around the time where people were like the Mario One record got loaded like multiple times within that time period. So I remember like a month or two later, I think I made like another one, or I forget. Within that like 2 or 3 month span, I made another one that did similar numbers.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember the big video. I was like, okay, that little video did really well. So I was like, let me make an action. Like I was like, okay, I made like a 7 or 8 minute video on one record, but I was like, obviously I like looked at people like Bismuth and Summoning Salt who made like more longer form content, and I was like, oh, maybe if I have had success with this one little short thing, maybe I can like make an actual video, like a longer video. So I immediately started researching. I mean, I already knew Mario World because that was my main game, so I decided to make a world record history on Mario World any percent, which has evolved quite a lot between. I mean, we already discussed this earlier. It went from just beating it as intended through the Star Warps all the way to beating it in under a minute with code execution.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that video was like almost an hour long, but I don't think I ever put as much effort into a video up until that point. I spent I remember that took place. So I mean, I uploaded the video at the very end of the year, so like December like 20 something, and I remember I was on like winter vacation. I literally spent my entire vacation like I spent like 7 or 8 hour days just straight up working on that video, nothing else for like a solid like 2 to 3 weeks straight. And I was like, I'm gonna get this out. I'm gonna get this out. I'm gonna get this out. I was like, I just like had a really big motivational spike, because this was still like peak pandemic, so I had all the time in the world to do that. Um, and it ended up being a huge success. It's called The Quest for Sub 1 Minute. It was my most viewed video until like literally like a month ago. It sat there for quite a while. Um, But I think that video alone is what really established me as a creator. Not, I mean, my first one obviously put my foot in the door, but that's like what really established it because um when I grinded those like couple months or a couple weeks, I like really learned like I learned because for my first video was like 7 or 8 minutes. It was very quick. I was just like, oh, this is 1-1, you do this is 1-2, you did like it was just like very quick one off, not really like that much depth to it. Where this next video I made was on the entire history of any percent, like I had to actually do research. I dived through like old forum posts and all that. I scoured through leaderboards and all that, and I like actually talked to a few different people. um I feel like that video really helped me establish the entire video making process as a creator. Ever since then, that entire experience has kind of been like the blueprint for any video I've made in the future. Um, it taught me how to like research and like more properly reach out to people, how to like script things, like how to like structure stories more properly. Because that was like really my first like long narrative story video ever. Um, even though I think I've made a bunch of like more higher quality videos since then, I still have like a huge appreciation for that specific video because it's just like it honestly became the groundwork for what I'm still doing right now, and it is the groundwork for anything I'm gonna be doing in the future or in regards to the specific kind of niche that I've been filling. Um, I don't know. It's just kind of been a journey since then. I feel like I've just been kind of riding the wave and just kind of seeing like what people want. I mean, that video got a lot of attention as well, and it got to a point where people started suggesting things, and I kind of almost got like expectations of like what people liked and what people didn't. Um, I remember after that, I kind of just started crawling into other Mario games. I did like Mario Land 1 and 2. I did like Lost Levels eventually a bit later. I did a couple other one-off videos. I definitely had a few duds. I've definitely experimented quite a bit. Like I remember I made like one random Spyro video that did really badly. It's like, okay, maybe that's not my thing, Um, so it's been a lot of trial and error since then. I remember the first handful of months were kind of frustrating in different ways. I feel like the first like especially half a year, people just called me like a summoning salt and bismuth clone, and that was it. Like that's what the comments
So
would be.
is every speedrunning creator. What
Yeah.
a very original thing to say.
Yeah. Um, and unfortunately still happens like with newer creators that come up to this day. Um, but that was kind of probably one of the hardest things to fight against because I knew people enjoy the content. I was getting views on some of my videos, and I was building up a fan base. I like I went from like 300 to like 10,000 subscribers in like I gained 10,000 subscribers like I in the first like month or two of making this. Like I just like whatever. So I knew people liked it. I just had to like
Hmm.
try to get past those kind of like surface level allegations, I guess you could say. Like I basically had to try to find my own style, I guess you could say. Um, and obviously to this day it's still evolving. Things constantly are changing, but I feel like probably like a year after I made those first couple of videos, I kind of established a style. I feel like confidently I've been able to say for the last like I don't know for the last like 12 to like 18 months or so. I feel like at this point I've kind of established like a style. Like I've learned, I have my own style of like narrate. Like I nailed down like a narration style. I nailed down like an editing style. Like I use like the same kind of like fonts and like stuff on screen. Like I have like that consistency now. That's like my own thing. Like it doesn't look like Salt or Bismuth's.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like I feel like I've almost carved my own niche in a way. But that's one of the really annoying things about being a speedrun creator. Um, is people think like, oh, summoning Salt Bismuth and that's it. Especially if you make it on a Mario game, like that makes it even harder. Because they've done a lot of that specifically. Uh, but I don't know. I would just say for anyone wanting to do that, to just you gotta just blow past that, and you gotta realize like, especially when you go to YouTube, that was the biggest whiplash for me going from just speedrunning myself to making content about it on YouTube. Is when you step onto YouTube, you are opening yourself to the casual audience. When you're just speedrunning on Twitch, you may get some casual people to pop in out of interest, but when you're going on YouTube, you're basically blasting yourself on public display in front of the casual audience. That's a majority of the people that are going to watch your content. Um, like I have a lot of people in the speedrunner community that watch my content, sure, but on a huge level, I know a lot of people watching my videos are people that have either A, never speedran, or B, have, but they like aren't in the community. Like they've like maybe done one or two runs ever. Um, so you have to keep that in mind when it comes to like initial comments and criticism, you have to kind of separate the criticism that isn't criticism, like the comparison comments, and the criticism of people that are actually like trying to help your content be better. Like it took me quite a while, like, I didn't, I had not properly made videos that did well for quite a while, so I had never really learned how to properly like manage audio and all that stuff. So I remember for quite a while people were giving me like, actual criticism on how like make my audio levels good and balancing things. Definitely take stuff like that, but don't take like, you kind of learn after a while like which comments are unnecessary and which ones aren't. Um, I'm gonna be honest, at this point, I don't even check my comment. I remember when I first started, I checked my comments like constantly because I went from having like 0 comments on any of my stuff to just like dozens on my different videos. So I was like, oh, this is cool. I want to read every one of these. But it gets to a certain point where you just get sick of it. Even if you see like some nice stuff in there, I still go through sometimes and look at it. But you just get to a certain point where it just gets so like you just see like the same junk over and over again, especially with like the casual people that just comment like nonsense, like, oh, you could be curing cancer instead, instead of
Mm-hmm.
speedrun, you see those generic comments all the time. It's just like whatever. Um, I feel like at this point I only check like my video comments maybe once every like couple weeks, maybe. Like I don't take the time to really whatever. It's just at a certain point you kind of just have to learn like, oh, like you don't need to take every little voice seriously. Um, I don't know. Again, I think the huge thing is really just realizing like who's actually a fan and who's just like a casual passerby. Because on YouTube, there's quite a lot of those for sure. Um, like I had a couple of videos that got way more views than the rest of my videos, and I can tell you there's a lot of passerbys that will never watch a speedrun thing ever again. And it's just like you gotta ignore those people. Like they don't really matter in the grand scheme of things. Um, I don't know. Like I'm in a group of some other speedrun creators, and we share some funny comments on our videos sometimes. Like and people just constantly are saying all these random things about just like accusing people of this and that and whatever. It's honestly like any other thing, like any other online thing. After a certain point, you just gotta like ignore comments. Like it's just kind of a natural part of being online, really. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Um, but I'm very happy with how things have been overall. I've definitely had some ups and downs. Thinking about content creation, it's definitely not as stable as some other things that you could be doing. I definitely have some huge dips and downs. Like I would argue right now in certain ways, I've been kind of in a dip off and on the past half a year. You kind of just have to ride the waves. It's kind of just how YouTube is. Um, but it has given me a lot of opportunities that I otherwise wouldn't have. I've become friends with a lot of other creators that you probably know, speedrun creators that you know about on the platform. Um, I'm going to GDQ in like a month or so. I'm gonna be meeting up with a handful of them. We're actually planning. We got a panel approved at GDQ where we're actually gonna like sit down and all talk about like some of our experiences and stuff, which is really cool. Um, I don't know. And also it's just been a nice little thing on the side. Um, it's been my main thing that I've been doing on the side in between college. It's been my pastime.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, honest, I never thought this would be like my side gig while going through college, but there you go. Um, I don't know. All I have to say for anyone that just like wants to get into it is just like, or just like videos in general, it's just like you really just gotta stop stop trying to just like chase whatever you think is gonna do well and just like do whatever makes you happy and passionate. Because like I'm honestly surprised I didn't make speedrun like scripted speedrun content or whatever like earlier. Because again, I've been speedrunning since 2015, so I'm kind of shocked it took me 5 years to kind of click that together. Instead, I spent time trying to like ride trends of making like memes that were popular for a week or like games that were popular that month. Like it's just sure some people can get lucky with that, and there are like certain instances, but I think better long term, like just make what you want. Like if you make some stuff you're passionate about, like and it shows through your content. Like if you're making something that you're not passionate about and you're just forcing out, like after a certain point, people are gonna like notice that. Like it's very noticeable. And if it, maybe not directly in the videos like how you look, but at least in terms of like what you're putting out like effort wise. Um, because I can tell you, ever since I started making speedrun content, like scripted speedrun content, I've never put more effort into these videos than anything else. I, I've never put so much time compared to other things. It's just once you get passionate about something, it really does show and it really does pay off after a certain period of time. Uh, as long as you're just constantly evolving, that's another big thing I would say too. Is just like don't get too comfortable too. If you want to do any of this, like you make one thing, don't just like keep making that thing over and over again. As long as you're just passionate about something and you keep working towards the next thing, That's really my big advice, is just make what you want and just kind of keep going to the next step. Because I think a big thing that sucked for me is I've lived in the moment way too much, where I'm like, oh, I made a video that did really well. Let me just like sit. There's been a couple times where I just kind of sit there and I kind of just try to ride that wave. There's been a couple times, like a year or two ago, I kind of did that. Um, but I think the good thing to do is just to keep moving forward instead of just like sitting there in the moment. Like obviously, like celebrate the good things that happen. I'm not saying don't do that, but especially things like anything online, like content creation. You really got to keep moving forward onto the next thing. Like, you kind of have to like keep evolving. I'm not saying that like you should tirelessly work yourself out 24/7, but I'm just saying like you can't get too comfortable, or like you shouldn't have like you shouldn't get too much pride in one thing. Like you shouldn't just like sit there going like, yeah, I'm the best for quite a while, because if you just sit there after a while and do that, like you're more likely to not be feeling that way in like a month or two, whatever. Um I don't know, that's a big thing. I feel like burnout is like really a real thing that
Hmm.
people don't discuss as much. It happened to me really badly last year. Um there was a phase, I'm trying to think, it was starting around springtime of last year. I decided, I was like, you know what? Like, I'm doing really well, so I'm gonna start making like these. I'm gonna start making videos. Like, I actually for a solid like 5 or 6 weeks, I uploaded a video every single week, like a properly scripted video, like 10 to 15 minute video every week. And for what I was doing, I got burned out so quickly because I was like, I cannot handle it. So that's the biggest thing. I would just learn to pace yourself for sure. I feel like I did a lot of that just to kind of try to please other people, because I was like, oh, I can pump out more content, get more things out, please more people. In the long run, I honestly feel like that kind of hurt myself, hurt my channel. Um, so I would just say like, obviously you like have to look at how people are receiving things, like get a feel, the vibe of your audience. But I think the overall message is just like do things for yourself, do it, obviously listen to people, but their opinions and their suggestions shouldn't be what you start with as a basis. They should only add on to what you already want to do. Um, that's really the biggest thing, because again, even as recently as this past year, I try to do things that maybe I do kind of enjoy doing it, but I didn't really enjoy it as much as I should have, because I started going into it as something that like I was trying. There's been a few videos I made where I started as trying to please my audience rather than it being something I actually enjoy. Um, there definitely are a few videos that like I don't like. Maybe I don't necessarily have like really bad videos on my channel, but there's definitely a few of them where I felt like I just kind of spewed them out just to spew them out at the moment. Um, and ever since I realized that, I got burned out after doing stuff for a week, and I took like a break for like 3 or 4 months or whatever. I basically like took the summer off. Um, and after that, I kind of just learned like you got to really just pace yourself into it. Do what you got to do. Um, Now, content creation really is not as like simple as it seems. Like from an outsider, I mean, I know a lot of people realize it's more than it seems, but like I don't think how many people realize like how much goes into this. A lot of people think that it's just you sitting on a computer pressing buttons and that's it. It's really not.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, I know a lot of people know it's more than that, but there are people who do like simplify it to that level. Um, or even if people know the whole process, they still think it's easy because they're like, oh, you just get to sit on a computer and do a bunch of things. It clearly can't be like that much. Like, no, it's quite a lot. The entire process. It's especially a lot for someone like me who's also a full time college student right now. Uh, I honestly don't know sometimes how I juggle some of this stuff, but I try to. Uh, but all I gotta say is just like pace yourself. Really, it's all about pacing. Um, you just try to spew too many things out at once, and it just gets really bad. Um, for some people, having like really strict schedules works, like uploading every week or two. But for me, it honestly killed me. I personally just upload whatever the heck I want at this point, like whatever is reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, uh, like right now, I'm probably not gonna upload anything for like a month or whatever because I was busy with school stuff. But it's just I don't know. That's all I have to say is that things just aren't as easy as it seems in certain regards. I definitely do appreciate where I am. Like I'm very fortunate for like what I've been able to gather and all that stuff, and I definitely want to grow it further. But It's definitely not like a cakewalk like some people
Mm,
make it. And I honestly have huge respect for anyone, for all my fellow creators who have like are even bigger than me and are pumping out even more stuff. I honestly don't know how they do it sometimes because I can barely do it some days.
mhm,
Um, but how I like to view it is that if one if one creator is successful in my bubble, then I feel like everyone is successful. Like, for example, like every time Summoning Soul uploads a new video and it's as successful as every one of his other videos, I'm like, oh, cool, the genre is still going, Like,
mhm,
that's how I like to view it. I feel like a lot of people when they first start, or I've even had moments like this, like, even still, it's hard to get those moments of like comparison and jealousy out of your head where you're like, oh, I wish I was that person or whatever.
mhm,
But I don't know. I've been trying to stay away from that mindset. I really just like to try to go towards more of a group mindset. I've been really trying to more just work alongside creators rather than trying to just be like, oh, I'm making this and you're making that. Um, because I'll admit that like a couple of my videos towards the beginning when I started, I honestly made them more just kind of like, I mean, I enjoyed making them. I did all the research and I very much enjoyed it. But I almost angled it in a way of like, oh, this creator didn't do it yet. I got to it first. Haha, that kind of thing. Um,
mhm,
I very much do not view stuff in that way anymore. I've not in a while. Um, but again, I think it's better to celebrate things as a whole. I very much behind the scenes like talk with and collaborate with different creators in ways that you may not expect, like whether it's like comparing like thumbnails or just like different advice on just the whole video thing in general. Um, I think that's another huge thing to just take away too. Is just like collaboration is key, and by that I don't mean it's not like you're gonna you don't mean I don't mean like just working on videos with someone. It's not like that, but just like if you can benefit other people around you, then it benefits everyone in that group as a whole for
mhm,
sure. Um, just being able like I've learned like so many little editing tricks and stuff from people like I know when I first started I talked to like one of the people I really clicked with at first was uh it's Maximum who is most known for like Flash games and Red Ball and stuff like that. Um I would say he's a person that really helped me going in a lot of ways. Like I got a lot of advice from him. Um, some other people I talk to regularly, like Lunatic J, some other creators of similar and slightly bigger sizes. Um, I just think it's nice to be able to have people like that. And it kind of just connects to the whole idea of speedrunning in general. It's just nice to be able to talk to people and collaborate and just kind of establish those communities rather than just directly, going against them, being like, oh, I'm better than this or I have this, whatever. I think that kind of advice just kind of goes across everything. I've learned that at this point. Uh, it's just better to do what you need to do, and yeah, I don't know. That's definitely my whole thing. I'm just kind of excited where I am right now, and I'm just kind of curious to see where it goes. I mean, all it really started was me just kind of randomly doing something I was passionate about. I was just like, oh, let me make this. I haven't done this before, and I had no goal of making it successful. I was thinking it was gonna be another video. I remember before that video, I think all my videos would get maybe, they didn't get like, my views would be in the dozens. They definitely would be only like double digits. I wasn't aiming for anything successful and it just happened that, if you just find something that you really enjoy and you're able to carve a niche, I truly think you can really carve any niche you want as long as you're able to market it in the right way. And speedrunning is a good example for that. Speedrunning is still a relatively new niche on YouTube in different ways, but I feel like inside of speedrunning, there's been so many individual niches, like we talked about earlier. There's the challenge runs, or there's the world record histories versus like just talking about individual strategy and all that, or just like an individual record, like I started with. Um, I don't know. It's just cool. I definitely had a lot of people just ask like, how do you get into it, and I honestly just tell people just do it.
mm,
Just try something. Your first thing's gonna suck. Like I'm gonna admit, your first thing's gonna suck. It's never gonna be like your first product is never gonna be a masterpiece. Even to this day, I don't expect masterpieces because each thing you make is gonna be better than the next one, right? So like just make something, see how it works, and just improve upon that. Make whatever sucks good. Just like keep trying to make it better. That's all I can really say. Like my first handful of videos, I like barely knew like audio levels and like how to properly use the microphone. I like knew basic editing, but I didn't know anything special. Like I didn't know pacing, scripting, any of that stuff. But you kind of just have to like throw yourself into it and just like it never hurts to ask people or just like be like, what do you think about this? That's all I have to say. Like my original scripts, I would just like throw at people and just be like, hey, what do you think about this? And some people would be like, I don't know, and then I just go back to the drawing board.
Hmm.
Um, that's all I have to really say. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's my whole mantra of YouTube.
Well, definitely a lot of information there.
I could go on for days just
Oh
about that
yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
I bet. I mean, I've talked to plenty of YouTubers, and yeah, once you're passionate about something, and you start to learn how YouTube works, like your brain's just full of all this stuff. You
Yeah,
just spew it out at any time.
I'm like an encyclopedia of random, yeah, advice at this
Hmm.
point. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Uh,
find it all very interesting how it all works. So I love listening to YouTube stuff because
yeah, it's
there's something
yeah.
so unique about it. Like it's so different than most any other job or hobby you could
Yeah.
have almost.
It's weird. There's like this whole like ecosystem and like game to it, because it's constantly shifting and changing way more rapidly than a lot of other things are.
Hmm.
Um, like all it takes is for like YouTube to introduce like a new monetization thing or like whatever. Like there's been all these little things that like we do to our videos, like try to optimize like people clicking on it or like how long they watch it and stuff like that. Um, like for example, my like it depends on different creators, but like some other like I've seen like little advice from different people. Like one thing I did is I used to have like really long dragged out outros, and what I do now is I make my outros as short as possible to like make the click rate consistent throughout the video. Like it's almost like you just like try to find all these little things. You have to kind of strike a balance between making the actual content you want and how you like market it and make it fit on the platform. Because if you just focus on that side, then you don't make an enjoyable video.
Hmm.
But if you don't make an enjoyable video, then you don't have a way to market it in a way that fits on the platform. So you kind of have to find a middle ground, I guess. And that's why I just really recommend like working, collaborating with different people. It doesn't hurt to ask somebody. I've asked so many fellow YouTubers like different questions. It really does not hurt to ask. Like we have an entire group where we kind of like swap things off of each other all the time,
Hmm.
and I'm really grateful to have things like that. And I feel like more creators should do that if they don't already. So,
Yeah, it's scary to be
uh,
on your own. So if you ever have someone to talk to about it, it just makes things a lot easier. More ideas that maybe you couldn't come up with,
yeah,
feedback that you can't give yourself. And then, you're always going to be your worst critic. So if there's another critic out there that can put you more down to earth, you don't have to overthink things too much. Makes it a lot better.
for sure. Yeah, I remember like my first handful of videos. Like I was basically on my own. Like I had like I'd interview like I'd like go and like DM different people like about different parts of research and stuff like that, or I would like have somebody look at my script. But I don't think it wasn't until I can't even think when I specifically connected. I just remember that It's Maximum was like the first like speedrun YouTuber that I clicked with, and we talked for a while. And it's since then it's kind of those relationships have flourished, and I definitely appreciate that. It's really not something I thought about, but it almost just kind of feels like a separate like family of people. It's really cool to have that.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I don't know. It's just it's nice. Um, I honestly had no clue what I was doing the first couple of videos. I remember actually I didn't watch the whole thing, but I watched back like my first video like sometime within the last month, and I was like, oh god, like what was I doing here? But back then that's just what I knew. You just kind of have
You got to
to keep
start
evolving.
somewhere. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
It's easy to look back at old things and be like, ugh, cringe. But, I
Yeah.
mean, everyone has to start somewhere. Everyone feels the exact same way. So,
Yeah, for sure. It took me an embarrassing amount of time to settle a lot of things. It took me a really long time to establish like a consistent like narration talking style. Like I've at this point I've like mastered like the YouTube voice. Like it's completely different than what I'm even doing right now. It's a very different tone. Like it's little things like that you really don't think about until you actually do it enough.
hmm.
It's interesting. But that's why I still use my that Super Mario World quest for sub 1 minute video as like a blueprint because that's where I first started a lot of that. Because what's interesting in that video, I think that's the first proper video I ever did a YouTuber voice. It actually sounded pretty good, and then for some reason after that, I kind of reverted back to like a more whatever normal voice for a while.
Hmm.
So I was just like, oh, I don't need to do that, but no, you kind of just like learn the rules of stuff and how it goes. Um, I definitely wouldn't say copy other creators, but definitely like look at other creators and just get inspiration. Inspiration doesn't kill anybody as long as you're not copying them.
Hmm.
Um, for sure. Like honestly, like the people saying like summoning salt and like bismuth clone, I would take those more as compliments rather than negative things because like at least they're comparing you to them. Like your
Hmm.
stuff could be so bad that you may not even be considered in that realm. Like just think about it that way.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I remember. But I remember I finally noticed at a certain point that nobody. I don't think I've seen a comparison of that on my channel in like over a year at this point. Uh, I remember the first like month I noticed I hadn't really seen anything like that, and it felt really good. Um, but yeah, it's just a lot of trial and error and trying to figure out where you are. Like you always have to start somewhere, and it's not really a bad thing if you do have to like lean onto somebody else's style. You know, you got to learn from somewhere. You know, use somebody's base and just work on some. Sculpt it into your own thing over time. It doesn't have to be your own thing to start with. It's not like everyone starts from nowhere. You got to start with something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like I didn't really start with any summoning salt isms, I guess you could say, but some people do, and that's completely fine. Um, as long as you use that tool to step off it and just kind of find your own little pocket. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's nice to be able to kind of find that like out of like the 5 or 6 immediate creators I can think of that I'm like kind of close with. You know, like we all make speedrun content, but we kind of all have our own like individual pocket. You know, like I know people who specifically focus on like PlayStation stuff. I know people that focus on like RPG stuff. I know people that focus on more just like broader Nintendo whatever, or Flash stuff like its maximum. You know, it's just like it's really cool that speedrunning is at that point where it's just like all these individual kind of corners because for a decent amount of time, really the main viable thing was just like summoning salt esque world record history. That was the main thing for a decent bit. Um, and then you had other people that kind of started to analyze the game a little more, and then I feel like after that, it just kind of like blew up from that point. I feel like there's so many. I feel like I find a new creator trying to do something new in the speedrun corner, like every like at least every week or two, I'll like get something recommended to me, and it's really cool to see that just people doing different things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I don't know. That's all I can recommend is if you want to just try doing something that someone else hasn't done yet, or at least try to do something that maybe somebody hasn't. Like I feel like that's another thing that like annoys me is that people like think your idea always has to be 100% original. Like if somebody makes a video on something, you can't make it,
Mm-hmm.
and that's just like not true at all. Like especially speedrunning, like like world records and games like change constantly. Like for example, a lot of like summoning salts like videos, like his first like handful of Mario history videos are like very outdated. You could very much like
Oh
do
man.
the same like yeah, especially like Mario 1 where like a lot of the times were found to be different more recently. Like
Well, that doesn't
there's like
affect it too badly, but yeah.
I'm just saying like it's just like, you can very much like make a whole new video and it's a whole
Yeah.
different product even if it's the same topic. Like um
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Like I've never let I've never let a video topic that already exists stop me from making something similar. Like I've made a couple that very much like rip off somebody's idea already, but I make it in my own way, and nobody's ever had an issue with that. As long as you're not just like stealing content, like as long as you're not stealing people's like words and just like using all of their footage and nothing else, and it's like whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know. Like there's no such thing as like 100% originality, I guess if that makes sense. Like I mean, we're in a day and age where you got to start somewhere. Like anyone making a video on Mario at all, like somebody else has made a video on Mario, like whatever, like it's happened already. Whatever, do your own thing. Just like add your own flair and twist to it. That's all you can do. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's all about just marketing it in a new way to get people to click on it. You I don't know. That
Yep.
that's kind of that's kind of just how the YouTube game works in general. Really, you kind of just have to find a way to like individualize yourself while I don't know. There's a weird balance between like trying to fit in with like thumbnails that people click anyways and trying to stand out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you have to strike a weird balance of that. I remember my quest for sub 1 minute video. I very much was guilty of having a red arrow on there just because other people did, and I mean it worked. So, um, but I don't know. Like one consistent thing I've done with my thumbnails is like using a same specific font that like no one else uses. You kind of just find like those little styles.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the same thing that a lot of other creators do. They have like one specific font or style type, or like for example, like summoning salt's thumbnail style. Like it's been modernized a little bit, but it's basically the same thing since he started. He kind of that's just kind of his style. Um, and
Yeah.
a lot of other creators
Every
do similar things.
thumbnail is the same. Same
Yeah,
font, same layout. Yep.
yeah. I feel like I still haven't like 100%. I don't know. I like kind of have a style and don't. I definitely want to try to. I don't know. It's weird trying to strike a balance between like homogenizing everything and also trying to make like individual things that stand out. Um, I don't know. It's kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know. I've tried so many different things. I feel like I feel like if I had to like say one of my things that I'm weakest at with the entire process is thumbnails. I struggle with thumbnails more than I should. Uh, I've definitely made some thumbnails where I know they're not going to do well, but I'm just like I don't know. I don't know anything better. Just put it out. Um, I don't know. That's probably the biggest thing I've had advice with other YouTubers. I passed off a handful of my thumbnails to them, and they like tell me to completely change it, and I do, and it's gone for the better. Um, like I remember, I'm trying to think. Like my most popular video now, which is the longest speedruns ever, I had like a few different. There was a few different thumbnail variants. Um, and I was gonna go for a completely different one, but then a few creators were like, "No, you should use this one instead," and I did, and it ended up being my biggest video. So just little things like that, you just kind of have to think about.
Mm-hmm.
I could go on a whole thing about thumbnails. It's a whole other topic. Um, but I don't know.
YouTube has so many different bells and whistles in it that you need to know how to do and could be explained forever. It's
Yeah,
all very complicated. At least that's how
yeah.
it seems. So.
Um, yeah. It's just I could make an entire crash course on just like specific things like thumbnails and just like how to structure things and
Mm-hmm.
all that fun stuff.
Definitely. Well, you have any future speedrun or video plans?
Right now I'm currently in the work of actually another Super Mario World history video that I've been wanting to make for honestly, I've wanted to make it ever since I made that Quest for Sub 1 Minute, and I finally have like found a right place and time that I feel like I can do it. I'm working on a 96 exit world record history, uh, which is definitely quite intensive. It's gonna be the longest speed run by far. I feel like the longest run before this that I did a record history of was probably like Mario Land 2, which is like 25 minutes, something like that, like something somewhere in the 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, no, this is a completely different beast. It's an hour and a half run. It's probably gonna take quite a while. I don't even have any exact promises on when it's gonna be out. It's still in the very early stages, but uh, that's been something I want to make for quite a long time. But past that, though, I really just want to focus on um, just making more stuff that I really have wanted to, but I just haven't like had the time to, kind of just find it, being more comfortable with just working with ideas that I've wanted to, but just I'm scared of making. There's a few other world record history videos that I may try to do during it. I don't want to put out any names because I very much may not, but there's definitely some other possible histories that I've been looking into the past couple of years that may come out. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's where I'm going right now. I'm trying to focus on more. I feel like I feel like I've been all over the place with what I want to do. I'm trying to just kind of focus on the bigger things that I've wanted to do and just haven't been able to. So yeah, I'm excited for the next like 3 or 4 months in particular for sure.
Yeah. Sounds like some fun projects. What about speedrunning though? You're still doing that though, right?
Yes, specifically, I've been doing 11 Exit Cloud. Actually, I came back to it like a week or two ago, and I actually got like two PBs back to back in like 2 days. I improved my time by like 4 seconds. I'm trying to get my ultimate goal is to get top 10. Currently I'm trying to get top 20. I'm 21st right now. I'm like half a second off.
Mm.
Um, that's been a fun run for me. I honestly wish I did it earlier. I've been quite addicted to the run. It's short enough to constantly grind, not worry about it, because it's just under 10 minutes. So it's been a nice category to do while juggling things like school and content creation and that stuff. So yeah, that's probably my goal for quite a while. Is I want to try to. It may take quite a while, but I want to get like top 15, top 10 in Mario World Cloud. I've been wanting to get top 10 in the Mario World category for years, and I definitely will. I want to do it someday. So that's my goal right now.
Nice. Well, if Chad has any questions, I guess now would be a good time. Is there anything we didn't cover that you want to? I think we got most of it.
I feel pretty good about what I want to talk about at least.
Yep. YouTube, speedrunning. The what?
Cool. That's been a meme lately. That's a flavor of Ben and Jerry's. That's an inside joke in my community.
Hmm. Well, asking the important questions, I see.
Yeah.
Very good, very good. You know,
Uh,
when you were talking about the Wii, I meant to say that I had like 100 Wii games at one point. I'm sure there were some shit stains in there. I don't know
oh,
whatever
for
happened to
sure.
them because I'm not a collector. So I could like give them away to people that would care, but I don't know what happened to them. They just disappeared. Maybe we sold them. I don't know. But
Yeah, I had a handful of Wii games when I was younger that I unfortunately got rid of at some point, and I hated that when I came back later to collect stuff. There's still a couple like heavy hitter games I used to that I don't have now that I still need to get again.
hmm
Um, but yeah, I don't know. I definitely encourage game collecting. Unfortunately, is can be kind of expensive. Luckily, with Wii, there's a lot of cheap, a lot of shovelware games and stuff are cheap, so it is
hmm
easy to get into in that regard. Most of my games are probably like $5 or less. So
Yeah.
uh,
I'm
so
again convenient person, so I don't collect games. I get them where they're readily available
yeah, yeah, I don't blame you, and
because
especially stuff like
it's
flashcards.
yeah, it's just again convenient. I like yeah, flashcards nice. Oh, I can just play this game now. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, for
it-
sure.
flashcards are the best.
Yeah, I have one for both my NES and SNES, and very much I'm
hmm
glad I don't have to spend all that money whatever I need. I mean, mostly just use it for like Mario, but if I ever want to play anything else, then there you go.
Yeah,
So
you can play like any ROM hack on console. That's great.
yeah,
Practice ROMs, save states. They're just great.
yep, yep, for sure. Yeah, definitely one of the most useful tools ever. Between speedrunning and casual, I've used it for like so many ROM hacks and stuff, just casually playing them too,
Yep.
for sure. Yeah,
All right.
yeah,
Well, I think we can end it off here. I think we got everything we wanted to say out of the way. So, and I know you got to do something, and we've
yeah.
already gone a
I hear
little
my
over
family
time from
yelling
what
for
you
dinner.
wanted. So,
Nah,
yeah,
you're good.
I'll try to save you here. So,
All good.
well, thanks for watching, everyone. You can check it out on YouTube if you missed some. If you're on YouTube, I stream these. So, you know, follow the two things, and then you can see the guests' links all on screen. There they are, right there. Click up, go view all of those. They're in the description as well if you're on YouTube. So, yep, we'll end it off here. Have a good one, everyone. Thanks for watching, and see you next week.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.